Councilman, just to make sure you heard me, we are now live whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Phil. I'm all set. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, now we'll make it a little better and so you can all see me too. I am not going to be wearing a mask this evening. There is no one sitting at the table here with me, completely by myself. Does anyone have any objections? Okay.
Kind of set us up for that one, Ed. Whether we wanted you to mask up.
This isn't working. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. Everybody can hear me. Can you hear me, Lynn? Okay. So I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon to you too, Councilman McAllister. Okay, we'll try to move along here as best we can. So meeting is called to order. It is 5:23. We have no minutes of the meetings to deal with. PCR 8220. We will start with item 2017-136. I'm sorry, item, oh no, you can all hear me. Item 2017-136, Barracuda backup server bundle. Department head, go ahead.
Hello, Phil Carlucci, MIS Director. This is a request under City Ordinance 612 to increase the award amount on bid 2017-136 by $32,770.92, bringing the 5-year total for this bid to $149,814.01. And we'd also like to extend it by 1 year to October 31st, 2021, which would coincide with the maintenance we're paying. The background on this is, if you remember, about this time last year, we had come to council. We had budgeted for some backup services to increase our backup capabilities because what we had was not sufficient. At that time, we found out that if we were able to keep our existing appliance for another year, we would be awarded an equal appliance, which would probably have a little more capacity to it, not enough to suffice, but a little bit more. So in order to take advantage of that, we did some other stuff to try to just become more efficient and effective and use a few not necessarily standard methods to do our backups for the last year. It hasn't been easy, but long about August, the company actually contacted us just to see how things were going. And I was very honest and told them, you know, we were just barely getting by, trying to get to that November date when our appliance would expire and we'd be able to start this new one. They were very nice and said, why wait? We'll give it to you now. So we've implemented that. And this is the maintenance on that appliance. And it's actually about 70% higher capacity than the other one we have. It's still not sufficient, which gives you an idea of how little capacity we had before. But when they gave it to us, I did say, if we go out to bid and decide that we want a bigger box than this one, and they said, absolutely no problem, use it for the next couple months. And if it comes down to it that you want one, you want to go with an appliance rather than a cloud solution, and you want a bigger appliance than this one, we'll give you full trade-in value for it against whatever else you wanted to purchase. So I was very pleased with the accommodation. That's kind of the backstory for what it is we're trying to buy maintenance for. Included in this is not just the maintenance on the backup appliance. It also gives us our email archiving software, which is our ability to retain all emails and do searches when there's an e-discovery and be able to supply that to the public. Any questions?
Okay. Phil, you said that this will be to increase your capacity, but not totally. How much more capacity, if you will, could we expect you to need, and what would be the future anticipated costs?
We're probably looking, right now, we had 20 terabytes. This has increased us to 36, when it gets down to about 36 terabytes. We're guessing right now that that's probably about half of what we actually need to be able to do it. Now, the reason for that is several-fold. One is certainly that's the nature of data. There's an unseen cost saving that's going on because every time we digitize something and keep it electronically, that's less paper that we have to print, copy, store, retrieve, all the stuff that goes along with it. However, that then increases your need to do backups to secure that data, make sure it's available. The second piece of it is, and then not solely that, but a big piece of this is the police department. Their forensics, it's not what it used to be, just paper and pencil. Now with cell phones and pictures and things they have to do to collect evidence, that increases the city's storage needs. On top of that, we've become very email oriented as a society, and we have a lot of emails that float in here, and because of the public sharing of documents whenever requested, we have to keep all of those retained so that we can provide them if necessary. So if we're looking at it systematically, probably about 75, maybe 80 terabytes to do this in a proper fashion where we'd have several iterations of backups, which would also protect us, God forbid, if we ever got hit with a crypto virus, and now all of a sudden that's been in your system for several backup cycles. You have to start going back further and further and further to find a clean copy. So putting that all together, that's my guess. And the cost estimate, probably in 100 grand. We're going to go out to bid, and we're going to try to find something rather than locking us into an appliance like we have now. We'll use the free one that we just got, but we'll take the remainder of our backups and try to find a cloud solution that is elastic. As we need more, we pay more. As we need less, we pay less. And that way we're not putting a big capital investment. We'll just pay as we go.
Very good, thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Are there any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion for favorable. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you for that, Phil. Item 2, 2020-109, traffic, street, and pole light maintenance repair, found on page 12.
Good evening, Krista Moretti, Public Works.
Good evening, Chris.
The department's requesting to increase this award to have some lamp poles and pedestrian crossings replaced as a result of 2 motor vehicle accidents. They are both put through the trust. They will not come out of the city's operating budget. However, because we are issuing the purchase order, it will go against our cap. So we are requesting permission in the amount of $18,028 to get these lights rectified.
And Krista, the entire amount will be reimbursed by the trust?
Yes.
Okay. Where did these accidents occur?
There was the one met the pedestrian crossing at Meadowbrook Terrace, along with the light at Warwick Ave and Kiley, and then there was a pole in Connecticut again that was hit.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
We have a motion favorable. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, thank you. Item number 3, 2020-110, elevator maintenance repairs, and that is found on page 23.
Public Works is requesting to increase the cap on this award, $1,805.68 to pay the remaining invoices for the period that it expires November 17th, 2020. We had, between the regular inspections and we had some repairs, we did exceed the cap. There is an invoice included in the package that is more than I'm asking for, but we had $739.75 left on the cap, which is why I'm not asking for the full amount of that invoice.
Okay, any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
We have a motion favorable. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. 2021-291 fire apparatus repairs, found on page 34.
Public Works is requesting a 612 to our current contract in the amount of $30,000 for a total cap of $80,000 for fire apparatus repairs. This is for outside vendors. The contract does not expire until June 7th, 2021.
And Christie, in your position paper here, you say there have been several large expenses related to the repairs, and this department is requesting an increase to the current cap. But I don't know if I've missed it or not, but is there anything in our package that shows us the invoices for those large expenses that you refer to?
I didn't include the paid invoices, but there was one that was, I forget which vehicle it was like $21,000. Ladder 2 went out for a repair for $33.95. Rescue 1 had a repair of $95.86.24. Oh, I'm sorry, that first one, $21,063.84. That was ladder 1. And then we had 2 smaller repairs under $1,000.
Do you say under 100,000 or 100,000?
Under the 2 small
Under
repairs,
8,000.
under 1,000.
Okay.
Yes. So our cap remaining right now is 11,260. But we're just being proactive and trying to get ahead of the curve with fire repairs.
And you're looking to increase it for another 30
Yes.
for repairs, up to 30? Or an increase of 30?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do you have any comments from members of the public? Are there any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion favorable. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. 2021-057 traffic street and pole maintenance, found on page 39.
Christy Moretti, on behalf of Parks and Recreation. The Parks and Recreation Department is requesting a 612 to the Public Works contract for pole light maintenance and repair. They are requesting a $3,000 cap for their department for the period that starts October 25th, 2020, expires October 24th, 2021.
So Christie, on August 24th, 2020, the council approved an increase in the amount of 15,000.
That was a new bid that was approved. That was for a
Okay.
new contract. Parks and Recreation is just doing a 612 to the contract that I presented at the last meeting.
Okay, so you're only looking for that particular item.
They are looking for $3,000.
Above and beyond the 15?
Yes, it's separate. Public Works has 15. Parks and Rec is now requesting 3,000.
Okay, got it. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Are there any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
We do have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
It just came in late. It came in after words, but we have one. If you hang on 1 second.
Okay. And the question is?
Hi, this is Pauline. I'm just calling in because the Zoom wasn't working, and I just wanted to know if the meeting just started, or if it has been going on for a few minutes.
It's actually started at 5:23. We are in the finance committee meeting at the current time.
And have you discussed the Bayside sewers? Because there have been like 9 people trying to get on this meeting since 4:40. And it's
Okay,
been,
you'll just have to wait until we get to that particular point in
no
the
problem. I just
docket,
wanted,
right?
no problem. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss it. Thank you very
No,
much.
no, you haven't missed it. It'll be a little while yet, okay?
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Phil?
No, not at this
I
time.
see another hand up.
Oh, no, that's just the same one. I just haven't.
Okay. All right, back to 2021-058, elevator maintenance and repair, found on page 57.
Again, Krista Moretti for Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation is requesting a 612 to Public Works contract in the amount of, excuse me, $2,000 for the period November 18th, 2020 to November 17th, 2021 for elevator inspection and repair.
So, Christie, Parks and Recs they conduct separate inspections and maintenance than the other elevators we have in the city? Is
Yes,
that why they need a separate $2,000?
Parks and Recreation has, they had their own budget and they have their own responsibilities. In this particular case, they do have what is considered an elevator, the handicap chairlift in the front rank, which requires the inspection's the same as any other elevator and repair when necessary. So that's the reason for this request.
And how often are those inspections done?
Quarterly,
Quarterly?
yes.
And what do they cost per quarter?
The ones for Thayer, they are, bear with me 1 second.
Sure.
The ones for Thayer are 200, well, with this company, Atlantic Elevator South is $272 a quarter.
Okay. That's the only one for them?
For Parks and Rec, yes.
Okay. So they're looking for maybe $1,000 spending authority if they have any maintenance expenses.
Their, the inspections will be $1,088 for the year. And then the remainder, I guess they would apply to their, any necessary repair that needs to be.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee? Do we have any questions from members of the council? Are there any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
Motion favorable, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item, 2021-087, Oakland Beach Boardwalk improvements, found on page 71.
Afternoon, Bill Facenti, Community Development Office. The office is asking for an award of $140,738 to Mill City Construction, Inc. of Lincoln, Rhode Island, as the lowest responsible bidder for the replacement of the boardwalk, the wood decking on the boardwalk in Oakland Beach that runs approximately 400 linear feet. This boardwalk was put in, I believe, around 1998. It was serviced in around 2006 or 2007. The wood decking has deteriorated to a point where it's unsafe and it needs to be replaced. It's coming out of the Community Development Block Grant funds earmarked for Oakland Beach.
Bill, the decking, let's start with the framing first. Is the framing being replaced in its entirety?
No, the framing is a full-length concrete foundation wall, 3
Okay.
sections. So that's not being replaced, that's not being touched. The only thing we're touching is we're touching the sleepers that attach the decking to the foundation walls and the decking itself.
And what's the material for the decking itself?
Pressure treated, PT.
You're using pressure treated?
Yep.
And
We couldn't afford the composite. The way the foundation walls are installed, there's too much of a span in between the foundation walls to allow for composite. So PT
what is the span?
Off the top of my head, honestly, I don't know. I'd have to pull out the plan to look at that. apologize. I can let you know if you'd like.
Is it more than 16?
16 inches? Yes.
Yeah, okay. Also, the pressure treated, you're going to be using like a 2x type of pressure treated.
It is 2 by
Or is
4
it-
by 2 to 4 wide. There's structural framing 2 to 4 inch thick, 5-inch wide.
Okay,
Yeah, it's substantial decking material.
okay. And when do you anticipate starting this project?
So we have the award. Once we get the award, the contractor gets all their material, their bond and their insurances into the the purchasing department. Person will award it. We'd like to start as soon as possible. Obviously, there's an issue with securing PT right now due to COVID. And
The major issue.
right. So we are working with the contractor to, facilitate that. We want them to start it, to demo it, and replace it at the same time. We don't want a fencing to be up blocking the boardwalk for a long period of time.
Has a price been locked in on the pressure treated material? Because as you know, I deal with this every day, and it's near impossible to get pressure treated lumber, and the lead time can be 8 to 12 weeks. And in some cases, you're put on a waiting list.
Right. So as soon as this is awarded, this will lock in the price.
Okay. Okay. Good luck with getting all those things put together. That'll be a nice project. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Are there any comments from members of the public? Hearing none. Bill, so I see we have 31 attendees, and I'm going to assume that most of them are from the public. Just give a quick explanation of the CDBG grant, so the people that are sitting in for the first time, and I think many of them are, understand what this grant program is, and the fact that it's not a cost to the taxpayers at all.
Okay. So the Community Development Block Grant Program was established, I believe, in 1973, 74. It's a grant the city of Warwick receives annually from the federal government to make improvements to low mod income neighborhoods, assist low mod income individuals through nonprofit support. And also we use it to assist in low mod income renovations of people's homes. These are not city tax dollars. The grant is received by the city annually, as I mentioned, and the funds are allocated through a competitive process to the nonprofits, and also through the process of the neighborhoods which are low mod income.
And who makes the assessment determination of what qualifies as a low mod income neighborhood?
The census tract, United States, the HUD uses the census tract information, census tract and block group information.
Okay, so it's a HUD function, has nothing to do with the city.
Nothing to do with
Okay.
the city.
All right, thank you for that. I hope that helps the people who are listening into the council meeting for the first time a little better understanding about how important and what a good benefit this particular program is. Any other questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Are there any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion favorable. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. 2021-088, found on page 75. Planting and landscaping.
Again, Bill Facenti, Community Development Office. These again, are Community Development Block Grant funds. These happen to be older funds that were earmarked to Connecticut Village, which is no longer an eligible area. The city received a grant from the State of Rhode Island Commerce Corporation to make improvements to the Connecticut Village Business District. Some of those improvements included replacing trees, along West Shore Road, painting crosswalks for pedestrian safety, and putting a brick and stone veneer on top of some of the sitting walls that are located at Beach Avenue and Maplewood Avenue. Since those sitting walls have been resurfaced, we're actually asking for $6,000 to be awarded to Yardworks, Inc. of Warwick to make some planting improvements to those areas, the sitting walls, the Beach Avenue, sitting wall at Maplewood Avenue, across from Maplewood Avenue, and also some planting improvements to the front of Donovan Park, which is located on the corner of West Shore Road and Beach Avenue.
So Bill, who is responsible for maintaining these plantings after they're done?
So the plantings are the responsibility of the city to maintain once they're installed and accepted, and the warranty period has elapsed. So they're guaranteed for a year, and then the city is responsible for maintaining. The Village Association in Connecticut has agreed to, there's a planter, corner of Beach Avenue in front of, diagonally across from Woodbury Union Church. They've agreed to maintain that planter through their program. We are, the plants that were selected are pretty hardy, drought-resistant plants.
Bill, I'm asking because, and I understand, again, it's a CDBG block grant, but somebody's got a hot mic and they're having conversations with each other. Phil, who is it? Okay, thank you. And, you know, I understand that it's, again, it's grant money, and it's grant money that certainly can be used, you know, in different places. Doesn't have to be used for one particular thing. My concern is the maintaining of these plantings. And we have issues all over the place with plantings that are not being able to be maintained or not being maintained for whatever reasons. We have them in the Rotary. We have them right out front here in City Hall. We have trees and all these planters all the way down that, to me, they look dead. I think at this time of the year, these trees have leaves on them. These seem to be dead. And we have what appears to be a problem keeping up with the maintenance of these plantings. So my concern is that we're going to be putting in more plantings that we are unable to maintain, don't have the people on board to be able to keep up with this maintenance and everything else that goes along. So I have concerns with that. So Bill, I mean, tell us why we shouldn't have those concerns when we're looking at these type of issues all around us.
Well, Councilman, I can't speak for everywhere else. I know the association, Connecticut Association, has or was going to reach out to Woodbury Union Church. As you know, they're putting a lot of money rebuilding that church. And one of these areas is right in front of Woodbury Union Church. So the association was going to reach out to the church to have them maintain. They're going to maintain their own property now. Across from that, the association has agreed to maintain that one. The one at Maplewood, it's a very, there's vegetation there now. It's basically removing some of the overgrowth, putting down a landscape fabric, installing mulch, and trimming it and cleaning it up so the weeds don't encroach upon it as much. The plantings at Donovan Park is about 10 or 15 very hardy tree plants, bushes. The area right now is very barren. It doesn't look as good as it could. The association has asked that we do this, and they have agreed to maintain the plantings until they are established. So once they're established, there's been plantings in Donovan Park for a while. Some of them that we just planted recently are under warranty, and they're going to be replaced from a different company. But the association has agreed to maintain them. So they've asked for this to beautify their
Okay.
neighborhood.
Sure, I mean, I certainly can appreciate that, and when it's all maintained, it all looks very, very good. So is it fair to say that DPW will be the ones that will have to maintain whatever isn't being maintained?
Well, in Donovan Park, they cut the grass now.
Yeah.
They cut the grass. The items that we're planting are they're low maintenance. They're
Okay.
they're edge pipe material. They're hostas. They're what the heck's the name of it?
Yeah, that's okay.
It's a
I mean,
common-
yeah, again, my concern is, all these plantings that are in the Rotary was supposed to be low maintenance and like kind of take care of yourself. And that seems to be a problem keeping up with. But, I'm going to support this. I think when you can do something to enhance the beauty and the curb appeal of a community anywheres, I think that's always a really good thing to do, particularly when it comes from the block grant. But I just wanted to express my concerns for the ability of the city, both from a cost expense as well as a personnel expense, to be able to keep up with this additional maintenance that we seem to continue putting on. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Are there any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
We have a motion favorable. We have a second. Councilman Howe seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
20, you're welcome, Bill. Thank you. Good job with these grants too. 2021-095A, Security System Monitoring and Maintenance, found on page 79.
Public Works is requesting to award this bid to Electronic Alarms for a one-year period starting October 13th, 2020, expiring October 12th, 2021 in the amount of $9,500.
Christie, is there anyone, or Phil, or whoever can answer, is anyone here from, or sitting in from Electronic Alarms that can answer some questions? Does,
If there,
Yep.
if there is anyone, if they could raise their hand, if there's someone in the attendees from Electronic Alarms that can raise their hand to answer the councilman.
okay, it doesn't appear so. Okay, Christie, you drew the short straw. So, Christie, these alarms that we have, are they required to be licensed?
The company, yes, it has to be licensed. And
No, I
that-
understand. I know the company does.
Oh, you
but
mean with the police
actual-
department?
The system itself, does it have to be licensed with the police department?
I would imagine so, but it's not something that I've ever filled out here.
I know in, the private sector, we have an alarm in our properties. It's something that has to be registered, I guess we'd call it, with or even licensed. I think we actually do pay a permit fee or something or other for that license. But you don't know if we do that or not.
I couldn't say. It's not something that I've ever done. I do see the colonel, so maybe he has some input on that.
Colonel, would you have any input on that?
I don't believe it is because it's a city facility, but I can double check with licensing and I can email you that tomorrow. They're out of the building for the day.
Okay. Are there any permits required to install the alarms or the cameras per se? Is there any permits that are required by the state or the building code for the installation of the cameras?
That would be
Nope.
something I think Al could probably
Is
speak
Al
to.
DeCourt here? Yes, he is. I see him. Well, I don't see him, but I see his name. Al DeCourt, are you here?
I am here.
Hi, Al.
Hi, good evening,
Um,
all.
Okay. Al, the question is, these cameras that, either are installed or will be installed, do they require a permit of any type? Al? Al, you're muted.
There.
Okay.
Yes, it would require an electrical permit.
Okay, it doesn't require any other permit?
No, just an electrical for the installation and running of the cables.
Okay. These, this award, Christie, this is, I assume will also be to install cameras as well?
This is just for security systems. This doesn't have anything to do with cameras.
Cameras are not part of security?
Not this particular thing, no.
Okay. So if they don't include cameras, what's the security that we're talking about?
We have alarm systems in our buildings.
Okay, so this is strictly for alarms,
I'm sorry?
strictly for alarms, not cameras.
Yes.
Okay. And is this for existing alarms or installing new alarms?
This is for the existing alarms that we have currently.
Okay. Okay, any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion for favorable, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Our next item, 2021-095B, Security System Monitoring, found on page 85.
Patrol Water Division.
Hi,
Water
Terry.
Department, how you doing? Water Department is requesting to award this also to electronic alarm from 10/13/2020 to 10/12/2021, the amount of $5,000. And it's the same thing. It's just alarm maintenance monitoring.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
We have a motion favorable. We have a second. Councilman
Seconded.
Howell seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. 2021-095C, Security System Monitoring and Maintenance, found on page 91.
Hello, Ann Corbin, Animal Shelter.
Hi, Ann.
How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. I'm also asking to award my portion of this bid to electronic alarms in the amount of $432 for a period of 1 year.
Same scenario.
Same scenario, October 13th, 2020.
okay. All right. Thank you, Ann. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
2021-095D. I'm sorry, we just did that one, sorry. (2021-099) reversible snow plows, found on page 103.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman?
Sorry? Did I skip
Mr.
over
Chair?
one?
Yes, we
Oh.
completed item C. We're
Number
still
12.
I'm sorry, okay.
You're on 12.
Okay, so it is on 97. Sorry about that. 2021-095D, security system. Go ahead.
Good evening, Lori Michaelides on behalf of the police department. The police department is also recommending electronic alarms at a cost of $432 for the year.
Thank you, Major. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any questions or comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, need a motion?
Move for favorable action.
We have a
Seconded.
motion, we have a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we're on 2021-099, found on page 103. Who's taking that under, I'm sorry, reversible snow plows? Christie? Christie, we are muted.
Is this better?
That's much better.
Public Works is requesting to award this bid to two vendors, Viking Sives and Hartford Truck Equipment. The reason we are requesting two vendors is because one vendor provides the 8 and 9-foot plows, the other vendor provides the 10, 11, or 12-foot plows. So we are requesting to award contract to both in the amount of $30,000 for 1 year, October 30, 2020 to October 29, 2021.
Okay, thank you on that, Christie. You know, again, for the people who are attending the experience of a Zoom council meeting for the first time, just a quick review. Typically, the Finance Committee isn't a big supporter of awarding bids to 2 or 3 vendors. We found in the last several years that has been much more activity from vendors in bidding on these different items when they have an entire contract, as opposed to, you know, one guy just gets a nickel dime thing and, you know, someone else gets something else. This is a different situation. We have one vendor that doesn't have one plow. We have another vendor that doesn't have another. And certainly the primary concern in the wintertime is to make sure those snow plow trucks are on the streets plowing snow and clearing the roads when our members of the community need that. So this is certainly one of those times when I know I will support the 2 vendors. It's just, it's for the benefit of everyone. Any comments from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any comments from members of the public? We have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
We have a
Seconded.
motion favorable. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item 14, 2021-100 underwater search and rescue team equipment found on page 106.
Lori Michaelides on behalf of the police department. The police department recently went out to bid for underwater search and recovery equipment. As this council is aware, the police department recently created a marine unit to increase safety along our coastline. This was made possible due to the donation of 2 boats from DEM, both in good condition, but needing minor repairs and upgrades. The first boat has already been gone through and has been deployed on a regular basis. This bid involves equipment to get the second boat ready to be deployed. The police department went out to bid for this equipment and received 1 bid. We are therefore recommending this bid be awarded to West Marine Pro, the only bidder. Equipment would be purchased as needed for an amount not to exceed $8,000 for a 1-year period, and this is funded through state asset forfeiture. I also asked Lieutenant Robert Hart, our OIC of the Marine Unit, to join us in case any members of the council have technical questions.
Thank you for that, Major, and congratulations as well to the police department for being able to acquire these 2 vessels. That's a pretty significant acquisition, and certainly thank you to our friends at DEM for also making this possible. I'm pretty clear on what you said, Major. I don't know if members of the committee, Councilman McAllister or Councilman Howe, if you have any questions, any comments, Councilman McAllister.
Yes, I just also want to commend the police department, the mayor's office, and DEM for coming together and getting these boats. And this is a great assets for our city. As everyone knows, we have 39 miles of coastline, and so this is very important, and this is a great thing. And you know, this is part of it. So I just want to commend everybody that worked together so we could receive these boats. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I would certainly say that these are 2 boats I hope none of us end up in. Councilman Howe, anything? You all set? Okay. I'm sorry, Councilwoman Travis.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Lattisaw. I want to congratulate the colonel and the lieutenant on receiving the votes, and of course, thank the DEM for these 2 great, donations that we received. I was very sorry I couldn't be there to welcome them in with the unit that day. Unfortunately, I didn't hear about it till it was late. But I see it every day where some of the issues that we have out there. So these 2 added boats are going to be really an extra people working out there to deal with the jet ski problems we have, to deal with a lot of the boating issues we have. So I really commend the unit for receiving them, and good luck with them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman Travis. Major Micheletti, again, we have a lot of attendees this evening who it's basically their first meeting. So it's not oftentimes that the taxpayers get to see some of these things that, you know, are really beneficial to the community and at no cost. Could you just share the approximate value of those 2 vessels that the police department was able to acquire from DEM?
I'm actually going to defer to the lieutenant for that one.
Okay, Lieutenant Hart?
Good evening, Councilman.
Good
Their
evening, sir.
price on the used market right now would be about $80,000 a piece. Brand new, you're looking at almost $200,000 a piece.
So that's quite an accomplishment. And again, at no cost to the taxpayers. These are vessels that we use oftentimes, certainly when they're needed on the water. Everyone really appreciates them. And so there's a little bit of maintenance, ongoing maintenance that occurs, but we have sidestepped the actual cost, and that certainly is a benefit to the taxpayers. Thank you, Major. Thank you, Lieutenant. Any other questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item 15, 2021-105, quick, pro, dry, or equal, found on page 109.
Public Works is requesting to award this bid to Site One Landscape Supply in the amount of $3,000 for a 1-year period. It would be 1 year from date of award.
And what is this going to be used for?
This is a weed killer.
So it's just be
They
used all over
spray
the place, the
on-
parks, et cetera, right?
They spray it on like the sidewalks and
Right.
things like that.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee? Do you have any questions from members of the council? Do you have any comments from members of the public? Any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
We have a
Seconded.
motion on the table. We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item, open government cloud service contract. It's item number 16. It is found on page 112.
Phil Carlucci, MIS Director. This is a request under City Ordinance 56-6, exception to bid to award the annual service and support contract for the OpenGov cloud service to OpenGov Inc. in the amount of $23,184 as the sole provider of their software. They are the sole provider of maintenance on that software. This software is used for e-permitting throughout the city, and the previous bid expired on May 31st of this year. And before we get into that, I just want to apologize for it being late, but explain that there's a fairly good reason for it. Number one, there was a change in ownership, and they had been very diligent about getting us the quote 60 days in advance. It fell through the cracks with the change in ownership. I've had a conversation with them, and they've guaranteed me that in the future they would make sure that we had a 60-day buffer in there. It was also, when we received the invoice, it had moved out by 30 days. So we originally had said this goes through June. They said that the invoice was actually due at the end of July. But the real delay in this was that the department director, Al DeCourt, had noticed that the bill was, in his opinion, stated too high for the amount of service, amount of permits that we had done. So he engaged in a very vigorous, it was somewhat drawn out on their part, but it was a very vigorous negotiation. And in doing so, he was able to reduce the invoice by 8%, and that's almost $2,000. So we should be very happy that we're able to do that. And they understood that the invoice was not getting paid until those negotiations were completed. So that's why we just clear that up in time for this meeting to get it installed for this meeting docket. And be happy to answer any questions I can from the technical end. And the director, Al DeCourt, is on the line also, so he could answer anything from the software's perspective.
Thank you for that, Phil, and thank you for the kudos and acknowledgement for Mr. DeCourt. Also, another one doing a great job for the city. This e-permitting has been a significant benefit to the city of Warwick, to its business entities, to the contractors, to the homeowners, to commercial contractors. The time that it saves in the permitting process is incredible. And, you know, so many times communities are kind of get the finger pointed at them for, you know, not being business friendly, and it takes too long, the process is ridiculous, et cetera, et cetera. This is something that the city of Warwick was one of the first communities in the state to implement, which is this e-permitting process, which just about all permits can be taken online now, right from your laptop, your computer. And you can pay the bill right online. You can call for inspections online, et cetera. It certainly is worth every penny that we pay for it, and it absolutely increases the efficiency of our building permit department as well. So I would like to ask Al if he could comment on that a little more, being that, you know, he deals with this e-permitting process every day. Al, if you could, please.
Thank you, Councilman Lattiser, and thank you, Director Carlucci, for your kind words. It was a joint effort on both parts to getting this resolved. You're right, it does expedite the process of having contractors come in, homeowners come in, taking time out of their daily life when they can do it 24/7, 365, and apply for a permit and upload their drawings and whatever documents we need. So this is a great asset to the city of Warwick. I mean, other than that, it's been moving right along with our department, so we're very pleased with OpenGov.
Good, very good. Thank you, Al, for that. And thank you for everything your department does as well. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do you have any comments from members of the public? Do you have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 17, 2021-137, DIMS software and hardware, found on page 115.
The police department is seeking authorization to renew the support contract for the department's DIMS system under City Ordinance 56-6. The DIMS system is used for the storage, management, and retrieval of digital images, video, audio, and other types of computer forensic generated evidence. The contract covers maintenance and warranties of the 4 workstations, the main server unit, and the backup server unit. The department is requesting spending authority not to exceed $7,000 to renew this contract. This will cover maintenance November 1st, 2020 through October 31st, 2021.
Thank you, Major. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do we have any questions from members of the council? Any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
We have a motion for favor. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next item, item 18, 2021-138, purchase Lucas 3 chest compression system, found on page 120.
Good evening, Jason Ummenauer from the Fire Department.
Good evening, Chief.
Fire Department is seeking a 56-6 exception to bid for the purchase of 4 Lucas 3 chest compression systems. Seeking to award this purchase to Stryker Medical in the amount of $47,491.96. Stryker Medical is the manufacturer and the sole source provider for this equipment. Equipment will be reimbursable through the 2018 Assistance to Firefighters Grant that was awarded to the fire department back in the fall of 2019.
Chief, it was awarded back in when?
Fall of 2019. It's a one-year period of performance, and it's actually been extended because of the COVID pandemic. So this grant will continue to be, we'll be continuing to purchase things off this grant probably up until the end of this fiscal year.
And Chief, when, again, this is for the members of the public who are new to the council meetings, and you guys also have some strong achievements here with your grants and your grant writing and so forth. When did this grant that you're referring to, when was that acquired?
So that grant, we have an excellent grant committee that volunteers their time here at the fire department to put all these grants in for FEMA. This was a fall of 2019 award from a 2018 application. It was a $1.2 million grant. It covers everything from officers training, which we've seen some bids come through here for. You'll see some bids for a replacement of all the hose and all of the water appliances on all the vehicles in the city. And this is just one smaller part of that same grant award.
Mm-hmm. And Chief, it wasn't that long ago that you also had acquired a grant for a significant piece of apparatus. I call it a super duper rescue, but you can expound on a little bit more. Let's share that too.
Yep, that was the 2017 grant, Assistance to Firefighters Grant Award. That was, I believe, in the area of $740,000. That was for what now is at Station 8, the new heavy rescue vehicle that you see. And recently, as of, I think a week or two ago, we also just got another, I believe, about $120,000 award from FEMA for PPE for the COVID pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Good job. People that know me know that we don't always agree, but I also am a strong believer in giving the kudos and the acknowledgement on behalf of our employees here in the city whenever we can. And this is a big item. That grant that the Chief was just talking about for the members of the public that are here, that grant was a total of $1,235,623. I would say that's significant. Chief, these compression systems, these chest compression systems, how many will we have now in totality with the 4 new ones?
We don't have any at this point. These are 4 for the 4 frontline rescue vehicles. We've been looking to buy these for quite some time, but because of the obvious cost of them, they're over. We're getting a trade-in, so we're getting for a little bit of a discount for some old devices that we have from back in early 2002, I believe, somewhere in that range. But these, we don't have anything that's operational right now, and Stryker is willing to take those non-operational units and give us a discount on these units, which allowed us to be able to buy it through this grant.
Good. Good job. And I'm glad you're able to expound on the efforts of the fire department on achieving those grants. Any questions from members of the committee? Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would also like to say, and I thank you for taking the time to identify some of the savings the fire department. I would like to go a little further is the key words that the chief said. There's a grant committee that gets equipment for the city of Warwick. That's 100% volunteer. It's a volunteer grant committee. And as you heard him say, Mr. Chairman, as you remember, we approved the purchase for the rescue, or as you call the super rescue, of a $700,000 truck. I know that working with this current administration with Mayor Solomon and his staff, they just purchased a pumper from the federal government in Germany, or it's an American pumper from a military base in Germany, and they purchased it for $1 and paid the shipping. Again, looking outside the box to keep our equipment up to date and to do and to save the most for the taxpayers and keep the service at the top notch. when you actually go and you speak to the firefighters and you actually go and speak to the command, you find out so many things that they're doing that are saving the money. Like you initiated today, Mr. Chairman, just by bringing up those things. There's a lot of sometimes way too much misinformation that's being shared or being said, or half truths. And the more I ask and the more I gauge in questions and conversation, I find out just how much money we are being saved with the new equipment coming in, and also working very well with the command, the firefighters themselves, and the departments, and the administration. So it's impressive, and this is just yet another example, and I'm sure there's going to be many more grants to come. And Chief, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments from members of the committee? Any comments from members of the council? Any questions? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
We have a motion favorable. We have a
Seconded.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
2020, thank you, Chief. 2021-139 Municipal Court Software and Support, found on page 125.
Good evening, Councilman. Linda Broska, City Clerk's Office.
Good evening, Lynn.
We're seeking a 56.6 in the amount of $6,220 to Courier Systems. This covers the annual maintenance contract, supports desktop team viewer and upgrades. Courier Systems is the software we use for municipal court. They are a sole source vendor. The funds will come from budget code 27340. Current contract expired on August 31st. A new contract period will be from 9/1/2020 to 8/31/2021.
Thank you, Lynn. Obviously, it's a very necessary necessity for the court systems. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
We have a motion favorable. We have a
Seconded.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay, next item. There are no minutes of the meeting, PCR 8220. We will go to PCR 8320, resolution relative to abatements.
Good evening, Neil Dupuy, Director of Assessing.
Good evening, Neil.
This month, we have abatements in the amount of $22,792.06. With that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Neil, again, I want to disseminate information where we can, particularly, as I said, to a lot of our new attendees. Explain briefly how these abatements occur, what they mean, how they impact the budget, and what I refer to as the Reader's Digest version. I know there's a lot of younger folks out there don't even know what a Reader's Digest is.
Sure. You and I do, though. We're old enough.
I do. I know.
Me as well. So basically, each month we'll put forward abatements, which are changes to the tax bills that were sent out to correct some errors that were made, or in some cases, applying exemptions to our citizens that deserve the exemption that weren't able to apply prior to the bills going out. In most cases this year, they're due to the COVID situation. And so people were responsible. They stayed in their house. They came out when it was safe, and they did apply for the exemptions. If they are eligible, otherwise, we did apply those exemptions and give them an abatement to do that. You'll also see on here, there's a very large abatement for North Star Aviation. Okay, that's a court settlement from a court case that happened way back in 2012. And so since 2013, there's been a credit that gets carried forward each year. There's still quite a bit that would need to get exhausted on that account as well. Some appeals regarding the value of the property will result in an abatement. So we go through those. There's not anything on this month about that, but if somebody doesn't feel that their property is worth the amount that it's assessed at, they can come to my office and we'll take a look. And if we agree, we'll apply an abatement for that.
Neil, you said that North Star Aviation, the credit began in 2012. This year's credit is $10,338. You also said it's ongoing. Ongoing for, what's the total amount of this agreement?
The total credit that was issued by the court was 300,000 in tax dollars. So a very large credit. This is over at the airport.
Mhm.
And there was an issue regarding the build out, and it was determined that they did not own the build out. So to their credit, they offered the city the option of paying that back over time instead of cutting them a check. So from that perspective, it was very good.
Okay. And Neil, if you could just take another brief minute and tell us about the different exemptions that are available to the taxpayers.
Well, we have exemptions regarding the senior citizen, so anybody that's over 65 years of age. We also have an exemption for our veterans, anybody that served in certain wars. You had to have been in during wartime, but certainly if you're eligible, come on in and apply for that. We've got circuit breaker exemptions, which are income-based. So if anybody's in a low income situation, they come on and take a look and see if they're qualified for that. We have exemptions relating to blind, prisoner of war. One thing I should point out, excuse me, all of the exemptions are listed on the back of everyone's tax bill. So they can go through and get a complete list there as well. A lot of people seem to be surprised about that, but they've been on the back of the bill for quite some time.
Typically, it's because they're concerned about what's on the front of the bill.
I agree.
Neil, how would someone go about applying for any of those credits? What would be the process for them to do?
Well, we've got forms right on the website, so they can go to warwickri.gov, and right on the assessors page, they can download all the forms, or they can come on into the office. Again, we try to social distance and make sure we're being COVID friendly. But if everything's safe for them, if they don't have any underlying conditions, they can come on and see us. We'll give them all the proper forms. And usually it's a very quick process, and we'll get them approved.
And where's your office located?
We're at 3027 West Shore Road in the Buttonwoods Municipal Annex.
Okay, thank you for that information, Neil. Hopefully that was of benefit to the people that are listening in. Any questions from members of the committee? Do we have any questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable act.
We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, item number 3, PCO 7-19, Pension Board. So let me start off by saying I have received a significant amount of phone calls today, text messages, emails. I did have the pleasure of speaking to several of the people that called in between my meetings and some of my business responsibilities. And it's interesting sometimes how misinformation can get out there and how things can be misinterpreted or misconstrued. This item that is before you this evening, this is a result of my sitting on the pension board for a couple of years now, several years since I became finance chair. The finance chair automatically has a seat on the pension board. The pension board is made up of, the majority of the pension board is made up by current employees and some retirees who pay into the pension plan. It's their pension plan. It's their monies that we're talking about. We're talking about not just a few million, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. What I have come concerned with is the lack of oversight, if you will, or protective oversight of this board on its own. Some people have said to me today that I am looking to change their contributions, increase their contributions, change any of those things. It has nothing to do with that. Let me be clear. The intent of this ordinance has nothing to do with changing anyone's contribution, increasing or decreasing. Over the last several years, I have also been sitting in quarterly on the pension board meetings. And a little while back, what I learned was one of the, I'm going to call investors from, perhaps I might not have the formal term, one of the companies that invest the pension dollars of our employees had not met the benchmark for 7 years. And that raised a serious question to me. And the question was, why do we continue using them? If they haven't met the benchmark in 7 years, why are we still using them? So before COVID, shortly before COVID, maybe the quarter before COVID kicked in, we had another discussion at one of the last pension board meetings we had. And I again asked that question. And I asked the question from the individual who pretty much kind of oversees all of this for us. And it was pointed out to me that this particular investment firm was in the inflationary market. And that is why they had not been able to meet the benchmark. And there was a significant spread in the performance between a top performer of double digits and someone who hadn't met the benchmark, who was in either a very low 1 or 2 percentile, or in some cases in a negative. And I asked him if he had any companies that were in the inflationary market that did meet the benchmark. And his answer was, yes, we do. So I asked that those couple of companies come to us, come before the board. We want to talk to them. We want to hear from them. And I also asked for the company that hadn't been meeting the benchmark to come before us again. And 2 of my colleagues on the pension board had also requested 2 other companies to come before us. So for me, this is about doing everything that we can to have transparency with what's happening in the pension board. We're talking, again, hundreds of millions of dollars here. We're talking about current employees whose futures are sitting there with those dollars. We're talking about retirees who are depending upon those dollars to be there for their continuing benefit, and our current employees for it to be there when they need it. I also included in this ordinance that the city treasurer have a seat at the table, and the council, and the wording here is the council liaison, also have a seat at the table. And the reason for that is the Director of Legislative Affairs / council liaison is an appointee of the city council, or designee, I should say, of the finance chair, which was approved by the city council. The treasurer's office is also an appointee of the pension board. But because you're not officially voted on to the board, they sit in the back of the room. They don't sit at the table. They don't have a seat at the table. They don't even have a table to write or make notes on. And that doesn't make any sense to me, where the city treasurer doesn't have a seat at the table, where the appointee of the city council or the finance chair doesn't have a seat at the table. So that's two things that it does is it will require a seat at the table for those two members of the community, of the city. It also makes sense to me that the taxpayers, in addition to, I believe it's the one seat that's on there, that the taxpayers also have a seat at the table on the pension board. We all know that our employees contribute a significant amount of monies out of their paychecks every week for their pensions and for their benefit. The taxpayers also contribute a significant amount of their monies to the pensions. And they're also looking to make sure that these benchmarks are met, that the plans are producing as best they are. And I think that that could also have a very positive benefit to the pension system in itself. Over the years, and it actually started with, at the time, it was, I believe it was Councilman Solomon, it was, I believe it was before Mayor Solomon became council president. He put or sponsored, along with many of us on the council at the time, a ordinance that would require the director of the sewer authority to come before the city council and give a quarterly report. And we expanded on that to include some other departments, of which I'll be taking some of that up in a separate issue, because it's kind of created a quagmire in some of our meetings with everyone coming at one time. But I think that it would be very important for the chairperson and the financial advisor of the board to appear before the city council on a quarterly basis. And the reason that I feel that's so important is the majority of our employees and the majority of our retirees, and I'm talking pretty much all of them other than the ones that sit on the pension board, for various reasons, they are unable to attend those pension board hearings. And I'm sure they get a report in the mail. Those reports are really thick and very detailed and involved. But I say to myself, so what's wrong with having the chairperson of the pension board, as well as the financial advisor, appear before the city council on a quarterly basis? Give the city council an update as to how the pensions are performing. Are they performing very well? Are they underperforming? How are they funded? How are they doing? I mean, we hear about it periodically, but we don't hear about it on a steady basis. The majority of the folks on the city council, other than the finance chair, I don't believe you're getting those same reports that I get. And they are very involved. They're very thick. They're very detailed. In some cases, you need to be a CPA to interpret them and understand them. So I think it's a benefit to all of our employees, current employees, retired employees, to have the benefit of having or seeing or sitting in on a presentation at a city council meeting of the pensions. They're paying into it. Taxpayers are paying into it. And I think having that type of protective oversight and interaction with the city council, the pension board, I think it'd be very beneficial in securing, or I should say, to continue supporting the pension system that we have here in the city of Warwick. Once again, there is no intent whatsoever. There's nothing in this legislation here that speaks to changing anything in contributions, how much, how little, more, less. Nothing to do with any of that. Has everything to do with creating an open dialogue between the pension board and the city council. Has everything to do with complete, or as best we can, disseminating of information on a steady basis to the taxpayers and to afford members who are vested in those pensions to come to a city council meeting on a quarterly basis and ask questions of those advisors. That's the intent of it. Nothing more, nothing less. So having said that, I would open it up to questions for members on the committee. Councilman McAllister.
Thank you. And I thank you for laying out your reasoning for this. I do have a number of concerns, and I see that the Chief of Staff, Mr. Bito, is here as well. One of the concerns that I have right off the bat is adding new members to this. Right now, from my reading of looking at this, there are 4 members of the public that are on this and 3 members, membership plan. So there is a union member, current union member that's on it. The city treasurer is on it. The finance committee chair is on it. There is an elected person that is on it. And then there is 4 public people that are on it. So right now, the way it's set up, there are more, members of the public that are already on this. And there's already 4 to 3 with people not contributing to it. And they are contributing, obviously, because they're taxpayers and if they're from Warwick as well. So I have some concerns about adding new members to this. I think that'll, that'll change a number of things on there. I am concerned about some of the people that are laid out on this in the legislation here. I believe the treasurer is already representing maybe the fire part. I'll have to ask the Chief of Staff on that. And why don't I ask, I have a couple questions for the Chief of Staff, but can you just lay out, I want to make sure I have the right layout of what the retirement board looks like at this time, Mr. DePasquale.
Through the chair, Mr. William DePasquale, the Chief of Staff. How are you, sir? I'm also a management elected to that board. I was elected by the management. As we know, this all goes back to an existing code of ordinance, and I just would like to correct some things for the record. There's not one public person that is on as a member. There are 4, and there are 3 members that receive a benefit because they pay into this. They're members. So there's the union rep, there's the retiree rep, and then there's the management rep. So 4 public, 3 reps. As ex officio, you're absolutely right, Councilman McAllister. by ordinance, the city treasurer is the custodian of the fire pension plan. Many people may not know this. I think they get a misunderstanding of what the retirement board is. The retirement board, you have to actually look at another code, and this is why this ordinance is actually inaccurate. Because what it does is it tries to change the city treasurer's position, but it does not go to section 20-91 and 20-136 of the Code of Ordinances that shall establish the city treasurer as the custodian of the fire fund, right? So you have a custodian, this is by ordinance, custodian of the fire fund and a custodian of the police fund. I don't know if you knew that, but the finance director is the custodian of the police pension fund. The city treasurer is the custodian of the fire pension plan, and the retirement board is a fiduciary of the municipal plan, right? Sounds a little complicated, but that's how it's set up. But some of the points that were made before, I think are inaccurate. Well, I know they're inaccurate. I know for a fact that the treasurer is fiduciary and custodian to the fire pension plan. The other thing I think I want to point out, any diversification of any portfolio is about spreading the investments so you minimize beta or downside risk. And I think the chairman, mentioned the inflation protected fund. And that inflation protected fund is in for diversification just in case of inflation. And we all know we're printing money, like it's, going out of style, and that will protect the plan over time. So there's no one investor that's going to tell you take all your, eggs, put it in one basket, large value, large growth. So in that point, I think the point of clarification, everyone knows in their own retirement plan or their own planning, the investors will diversify. And I respect Councilman Lattisaw because he sits on the board with me. But the benchmark that he refers to is something that may or may not be achieved by other firms, but we interview the other firms. Every time the retirement board meets, usually quarterly, we'll bring in other firms, we'll interview. So I just want to clarify, and it's okay to have a difference of opinion, but what is not okay is a difference of fact. And the fact is the legislation that's presented now is inaccurate. It doesn't establish a balance between public, plan members, city council, and administration. The legislation is costly. Having the investment advisor isn't free. He shows up, he costs money. But what we can do is we can make sure that the electronic copies of the report is sent to anyone that wants it. Moreover, in the years I've been on the retirement board, I've seen many people go there and just sit in the back and listen. And if you have a responsibility and you have an investment, you can show up. So, I mean, I would be happy to, see if we can forward, the fiscal plans to everyone to take a look at for quarterly. So that to me, that isn't an issue. I think the other thing that everyone should remember is municipal employees contribute about 9.5% of their base salary. Police 16.71 and fire 14.34. And they're commingled for the obvious purposes, your best bang for the buck. But the fiduciary and the custodians of the police and fire plan are different than the retirement board. So I would argue that as crafted in this ordinance, and it's been around for a long time, it's well balanced. Because beyond the members, which is 4 public, not 1, and 3 plan members, you have the ex officio members that are municipal union. They're the city finance director as a custodian, the city treasurer is the custodian, and they don't sit in the back room. What they could do theoretically is make an investment on their own behalf of the plan. It makes no sense. We pay a lot, this investment by a lot of money, so they listen to it in most times and they invest appropriately. It also should be understood that the personnel chief, the administration is represented, which is the personnel director, and the chairperson of the finance committee. So when you look at this, it's as balanced as you can get in terms of all the stakeholders. And the legislation that's proposed will make this wildly disproportionate, is not even written correctly because it does not amend section 20-91 or 2136, which is an ordinance too, which gives the custodial activities to the treasurer and the finance director. Those are some of the points I'd like to make regarding this. And I think from the point of view of working through both the administration and the council, keeping an open dialogue, these meetings, they're kind of fun to go to. You got different points of view. Doesn't mean any one point of view is correct. The investment advisors, he throws it out there. They vote as a body. And many times since I've been on the board, we've gotten rid of certain mutual funds. We've added mutual funds. And I would put our review of these funds up with any other pension plan. Just look at the minutes. We routinely review and rate each one. But I don't think it's fair to say because there was a laggard in the portfolio, it wasn't there for a purpose. The purpose is protecting downside risk. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
And also, by the way, I'd just like to point out, I think you do an excellent job on the pension board. You certainly present a wealth of knowledge there. And I know at that meeting that I was questioning the 7-year length of time where this particular investment company didn't meet the benchmark. You not only agreed with me, you actually requested one of the other companies to come before us, as did one of our other members come before us. And
worked perfectly. Yeah.
The point here, Chief, is that the first time that was brought up, it didn't seem to be important enough to, continue with a further discussion. And then as time went on and it didn't improve and I pressed forward with it, I was very happy to see you and one of our other colleagues say, you know what, he's right. Let's bring in these other two companies too, and let's find out what the heck is happening, why this is and why that isn't. And that's what this is all about. We're saying that, we do have members of the community, or you're referring, the point here is the city finance director doesn't necessarily sit in the seat of a taxpayer. The city treasurer does not hold the title necessarily of a taxpayer. The city's personnel chief doesn't necessarily hold the seat of a taxpayer. Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying with the 2091, 2136, and this is why we have these discussions. We put forward these articles. We're all very cognizant of running afoul with any of the open meetings violations, and everyone is very careful with that. So that's what this is about. It's about having this discussion and to see how we can improve on what we're doing. So I got it on the 2136, the 2091. The disproportion in the balance, I think that's something that would warrant further discussion. And, I would certainly be happy to meet with you on that, Chief, because I'm not convinced that because the finance director or the city treasurer or the council liaison, I'm not convinced that they're a taxpayer. And I think that's something that has to be reviewed a little further. I'm fully aware of the balance and the importance of a balance on any of these committees and any of these commissions. I certainly have served on enough of them throughout my career. And I also understand the impact of imbalance. So having said that, we'll continue with any comments, concerns. I know there's also a fair amount of members of our staff throughout the city that want to speak, and I welcome those comments. But I would also preface it by saying I will be moving to hold this for a month to give us, or give me an opportunity to meet with the chief of staff and anyone else I need to meet with to explore this position a little further. Any other, Councilman McAllister?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so just again, on my concerns are adding additional people. Again, I have the city treasurer appointment, also the city council liaison. I have some concerns on that, just on, we don't want it to look like you're adding additional, you know, the city council liaison works for the city council and there's already a member of the city council on there. So you don't want it to look like there's 2 votes for, you know, for one. I definitely agree with, I think we should be receiving the quarterly reports. I know that they provide those. If that's something that we can get emailed to the whole council, I think we would definitely like that. And I appreciate you bringing that, you know, bringing that forward. So those are my concerns as you work through the language on this. Again, we want to make sure that it's within the charter as well. Again, who constitutes, you know, public. Again, the way I'm reading it here, it looks like it's 4-3 with public people. You know, but more brains the better. I think that's correct in your thinking of that. I just want to, I just have some concerns on just, you know, the way it looks right now. And I know you said you're going to hold it and make some changes here. It looks like you have some people already laid out. I just like to flesh that a little more, what that looks like. You know, what the taxpayer is. Is it a Warwick taxpayer? Is it a resident? Is it a citizen? What these things look like. So those are things that I'd like to flag at this time.
Fair enough, Councilman. I would point out that the council liaison has already been designated by the city council as an appointee of the finance chair, meaning that, and you're right, it needs to be clarified in here, meaning that if the finance chair is not present, that the council liaison sits in his or her place.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I thought it was adding her, so you would also be and her, or whoever the person is. Yes.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
And, you know, Councilman, for me, it this may not be. Let me just for the designee of the finance chair to, and as well as the city treasurer, who the chief clearly pointed out is technically a member of the board already, to not have a seat at that table. That just doesn't make any sense.
And one more suggestion, and again, that's if we're flushing this out and talking about it here, maybe as a designee, if the finance chair can attend, maybe another member of the finance committee could attend that, could attend that meeting. Just throwing that out there.
And, you know, certainly that's why these type of discussions are so important. And I gotta tell you, I mean, we've had numerous discussions, you know, over the last several years. Some of these discussions, they get pretty heated and pretty debated. This, to me, this is what governance is about. We all recognize that, you know, there's always a place to improve. Status quo cannot and should not and must not be acceptable. There is time that we need to revisit things. There's that time and place where we must say that, okay, you know what, things are really, really good, but I think we can do a couple of things here to make it a little better. To go to the point of the notice to the council people, that's a great thing. I obviously would support that. I am not convinced that all the members of the pensions be it our current employees and be it our retirees. I am not, and I'm not pointing a finger. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not saying, oh, this was intent. I'm not saying any of that. It's what we're saying is, so we can do this better. And I think what's better is that we come up with a better way to keep all of the people who are depending on these pensions informed. The simple information, not some big 2-inch thick booklet that you got to be a CPA to go through or understand or communicate with. And this is why I added in that section of the chairperson and the financial advisor to come before a council meeting. And you may say, well, quarterly is unnecessary. Fine. Maybe semi-annually would be more appropriate. But what harm does it do to allow the people who are paying into the pensions, who are depending on these pensions, and who are relying upon them to be there, to have an opportunity twice a year to come into the council chambers and ask questions of the people who are overseeing their monies. So again, I will be holding this. I appreciate all the comments tonight. I appreciate the input. I know there's other folks that want to speak. Councilman Qualley, I see your hand up, please.
I have a simple question. At least I think it's simple. Line B6, it says the president of the union ex officio. What union, why is it limited to one union, and is that explained somewhere else? Because we have several in the city.
That, Councilman, is a very good question. I'm not afraid to say I don't know, and I don't know, but I'm going to defer that to the person I'm sure does know, and that will be the chief of staff.
Mr. Director, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I mean, I think I've known a lot of people in the city that have been here a long time and really doesn't understand the pension. You really have to read the ordinance first. Basically, the police and fire have their own pension system that is approved through the Board of Public Safety. The retirement board, which we're speaking of now, acts as a fiduciary of the municipal plan. However, we pool our money for the, so we can share the investment advisor. We have a larger pool of money. We're able to, increase our investments. So when we talk about the treasurer not having a seat at the table, the treasurer and the finance, they act as a custodian for those pensions, fire and police. Theoretically, they could act on their own if they wanted on behalf of the custodian, because they're custodian of police or fire. They sit at the table to listen to the investment advisor, take that money, take the consultancy that they get, and move these monies together in one holistic fashion. But they're all broken out. And when you look at the quarterly report, you can actually, they break out municipal, police, and fire. And they have a varied performance in terms of their funding status. But the funds are all commingled. So getting back to Councilman Coley's question, the reason why is because the retirement board is only the fiduciary of municipal plan. So the only municipal plan member would be, from the municipal plan, because the board is a fiduciary instead of an individual person.
Thank you, Chief.
You're very welcome.
Councilman Crowley, go ahead.
I have a question. If we're pooling all the money, I think that my opinion is that each union president should be allowed to come. They don't have to come if they're satisfied with what their own group is doing, but it seems like it's the same pile of the same account that is going to be spread out through the city. And I just don't want to not include them. And if it's their own personal choice, whether they want to. And I just think it should be modified to say that each union president should be allowed to attend if they wish. That's all.
Thank you, Councilman.
To that point, just to clarify, because I don't like loose ends, absolutely, anyone's welcome to go to these boards, and police and fire do a wonderful job at managing their funds. Believe me, they're very, very good. And they can attend, they can look at these, and time to time, they've, reviewed them. Sometimes they know the plans better than we do. And again, that's their police and fire pension plan. In terms of the investments, they look at the investments too. They'd be the first to tell us if we were lagging the market or lagging our benchmark. But let's not get that confused with what the retirement board does. The retirement board is the fiduciary for people only in the municipal plan. So there's a little, there's where the Board of Public Safety deals with the implementation of police and fire. A little convoluted, but it's all in the ordinance. It's been in the ordinance for as long as I've been here.
Thank you, Chief. We have another hand up. Who is that? Is that Councilman Sinapi? Councilman Sinapi, do you have your hand up?
Can you hear me?
No, I can't. Councilman Sinapi?
I said, can you hear me? And you said, no, I can't.
Okay, now I can, yes.
Oh, you couldn't hear me well. I get it now.
I can hear you, yes.
I just had a few points. I get the idea of wanting people to have some oversight and whatnot, but most of what you're speaking in regards to is already possible as far as being able to attend the pension board meeting. And the quarterly reports, any of us can get them right now. Once I saw this bill come up, I asked for them and I got them. So for those who want to on the council, feel free. I don't really have any strong feelings one way or another as far as automatic emailed reports, given that I'm capable of getting them at any moment. But I get it. Some people might not want to go the trouble, and I don't blame them. Regarding having the financial advisor come here, I mean, it's my understanding that that financial advisor gets paid to show up to meetings. So I'm not particularly a fan of the fact that we're going to be paying somebody more than we already have to. And I think they're paid via the fund, or regardless, either paid directly via taxpayer money or via the fund, which is taxpayer money anyway. So one way or another, I don't like the idea of having to pay that person more than they already are, especially when that information could be found out from these people by going to the meetings, or in our case, from using the reports. And frankly, just like with sewers, like if I want to hear something about sewers, I go to the meeting just like anybody else, and I ask questions. We don't drag them here when we have every little question. And I don't see any reason to do it different. And I'm a little concerned based on my understanding, a lot of the parties who have a vested interest in this whole thing, this pension board, weren't really contacted about this prior to learning of it themselves from the agenda, which is concerning. Given that it's going to be held for a month, that somewhat moots the concern. But if I'm them, I'm going to have a bad taste in my mouth. So in the future, I know when I do this stuff, I try to notify them first and have the conversation. And in fact, I think you usually do too, to be honest. I definitely think we should go about that way, especially in times like this when everybody's on edge with COVID. But I'm hard pressed to see the reason to stack on a bunch more members. But I'll see differently after it's held for a month. I guess we'll wait and see.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions, comments from Councilman Howe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to say I appreciate you giving us the month to review it and look it over, and that'll also maybe answer some questions, bring up some more questions that we can address and moving on. So I would support holding it for a month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Before I make a motion to hold it, I know there are quite a few people who have joined us on the Zoom meeting, and I'm going to give them an opportunity to express their comments. But before doing so, I once again just want to extend my appreciation for the discussion, that we just had. So we have some questions. We have some things that we have some commonality with, some things that we perhaps disagree with, and some things that perhaps we can improve on. But what we've done is we've began a discussion about a significant investment in the future of our employees and our retirees. And I think we have certainly shed a lot of light upon the life and the interaction of the pension board. The majority of our employees, their entire retirement future is sitting in this pension. And my goal is to have the best balance that we can, tweak it where we can, leave it alone where it's fine, and make it as easy as possible for not only the members or the employees to get this information, but also for the taxpayers. Sure, it's easy to say that, you know, we can go to any meeting we want, and we can go, anybody can go to a pension board meeting. The pension board meetings start at 2:30 in the afternoon. That's when we hear from a couple of our advisors. The actual board meeting starts at 3:30 and it's over at 5:30. Most of the taxpayers and the folks that I know that work don't get out of work till 4:30, 5 o'clock. And I know over the years, we've often tried to make it as easy as possible for the taxpayers to be able to get to this information and attend our meetings. But again, thank you all for the for this discussion. I certainly feel it's beneficial. Phil, I will open it up for any comments from any attendees that wish to make any comments regarding this. Just keep in mind it is something that I will be making a motion to hold, but I want to have anyone that wants to speak have an opportunity to speak. Are there any
I don't
members
see
of the
anyone.
public?
I don't see anyone with their hand raised. If anyone wanted to speak, if you're not familiar with the Zoom application on the bottom, you can raise your hand as one of the options. Then we know you want to speak.
We
do
have
have
one attendee that wants to speak. Please identify yourself for the record.
Joe Kavanaugh, 75 Chelmsford Ave. I'm just glad that we're holding this for a month. I only just found out about this today. And I look forward to a healthy discussion going forward since I'm a new member on the pension board, and look forward to hashing this out. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it, and I look forward to it as well. One more time, any other members of the public have any comments? Hearing none, I will make a motion to hold PCO 7-19 until October 19th.
I'll second the motion to hold October 19th.
Okay, we have a motion to hold. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you once again for the discussion. An ordinance relative to senior and veteran exemptions. As the prime sponsor, I will ask to hold that, if we could, until October 5th. Could I have a motion to hold till October 5th?
Motion to hold to October 5th.
Seconded.
We have a motion to hold till October 5th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. An ordinance relative to employee benefits that is not drafted. Look to hold until October 19th.
Motion to hold to October 19th.
Seconded.
We have a motion to hold. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. An ordinance relative to tangible property tax regarding vacant storefronts. Councilman Sinapi, it's not drafted. Your
Just till
pleasure.
next meeting, please.
Hold till September 21st. Is that correct, Councilman Sinapi?
Yes.
Okay, I need a motion on the request of the sponsor.
Motion to hold to September 21st.
Seconded.
We have a motion to hold till September 21st. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. An ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 1 of the City of Warwick Code of Ordinances. That is PCO 7-20. Okay, so this has something that has been on our calendar here for a while, and I've been holding and holding and holding. Initially, this would require the Director of Public Works to appear before the City Council at the first meeting of every month. There was some discussion and comments that that seemed to be unnecessary. Perhaps something else was appropriate. What I'm going to be asking for is a quarterly meeting. And I'm going to also look to hold this for a brief period of time, because one of the other concerns was from several of my colleagues actually, is that we're going to have what I think will be 4 departments coming before the City Council for a quarterly report all in the same time. That's going to be convoluted and very time consuming. So I'm going to ask for a little bit more time to come up with a more appropriate schedule. But the reason for this, as you know, we have MIS coming before us. We have the Sewer Authority, we have the Water Department, we have the Engineering Department. And these have been very productive. They've been going on for some time now, very informative, and also happens to be a very good way to inform the members of the public. This council chamber is not, and very rarely is it filled, as we all know, with members of the public and taxpayers, but we do have more and more people connecting into our audio and the visual system of the council meetings. So I think it'd be an excellent opportunity for, in this particular case, the Director of Public Works to give a quarterly update as to where we are with, as an example, a $10 million bond repair, where we are with some of these other issues that we deal with sometimes on a day-to-day basis, if not a weekly basis. So that's the intent of this. I will ask that we hold it until October 19th, but prior to doing that, do we have any comments, questions from members of the committee? Any comments or questions from members of the council? We have one hand up. Donna, Councilwoman Chavez. You're muted, Councilwoman.
Yes. One concern I do have is because it's the Public Works Division, you know, they have 8 divisions there. And I could just see it being prolonged, like one council person might be concerned about hearing about street lights or potholes when somebody else might be worrying about sanitation and the fleet, what's going on with the plows. So I mean, got to take that in consideration that this report might take a lot longer because we do have 9 council people, but that Public Works has 8 units in it. I mean, 7, we took Parks and Rec back, so I think they got 7 units. So it could get into be very lengthy too. I just, it's good that we all know what's going on. I have no problem going to the Public Works Division and asking them several questions, all about any divisions. But, and I do like some of the reports that we've been getting. It has been helpful. But I think we got to take that in consideration that it's the Public Works, and maybe the public doesn't know Public Works is not just one little division. It's a lot of divisions. So that was my concern.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions from members of the council?
Yeah.
Councilman Snappy?
So Matt, I've already spoken on this a few times, and I don't really want to go in depth given that it's coming back anyway, but I'll reiterate a bullet point of my prior concerns. One being that we're paying an engineering firm to do much of what's being asked for here anyway, and we'll be getting those reports Number two, most, if not all of this, we can do already, and most of us do already by contacting DPW directly. Now let's see. Number three, honestly, it seems a waste of a director's time, given that we're already informed about it regardless, especially if we just pick up the phone. But I'll refrain from going in depth or covering further points until it comes back.
Any other questions from members of the council? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Any comments from members of the public? Okay. I need a motion to hold until October 5th.
Motion to hold October 5th.
Seconded.
We have a motion to hold. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that. PCO 8-20, ratification of teacher contracts and support personnel contracts. I am also going to ask for a motion to hold that until October 5th.
Motion to hold October 5th.
Seconded.
We have a motion to hold. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. A resolution relative to repairs to the damage at Lippert Park. I'm going to hold that till the next meeting. Quite frankly, I have not been by there in the last week and a half or two. I was by there the very night of the previous council meeting, and there were still some repairs that needed to be made. I have not been by there in the last couple of weeks, so I'm going to look to hold that until September 21st.
If I may.
You may.
So it's my understanding, and based on the pictures I was provided, that Lippert Park repairs were completed. So I'd rather not see this get kicked around further.
Well, that's fine, Councilman Sinapi. I can tell you that is in my ward, and it is my responsibility. The city has been paid an insurance settlement of about $4,800 to repair the damages that were caused by that accident. And I want to be sure that my constituents that live in that area of Ward 5 receive the benefits of that, and that all of those items are repaired.
So you think that without this resolution, you cannot be sure of that, nor can you be sure of my
Well, what I-
representations to
well-
you of pictures I was provided, nor sure
What
of
I-
the representations by others that were made to me.
I make a motion, we hold until September 21st.
That's what I thought.
Seconded.
I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. PCR 2920, resolution memorializing the General Assembly to enact legislation authorizing the city of Warwick not to issue not to exceed $10 million general obligation bonds, notes, and other evidences of indebtedness to finance the construction, renovation, improvement, alteration, repair, furnishing, and equipping of athletic and/or recreational fields and facilities for the city's high schools, subject to approval of the state housing aid at a reimbursement rate. The state share ratios of not less than 35% at the time of issuance, and provided that the authorization shall be reduced by the amount of certain grants received by the state bond proceeds for the Rhode Island Department of Education or from the Rhode Island School Building Authority. Councilman Sinapi.
At the request of the school department, hold till next meeting.
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion to hold to September 21st.
Seconded.
Request of the sponsor, we have a motion to hold until September 21st. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
PCR 41A-20, resolution addressing fiscal requests for education for fiscal year 2020 through 21, not drafted. Councilman Sinapi.
Hold till next meeting.
Need a motion to hold till September 21st.
Motion to hold to September 21st.
Seconded.
We have a motion to hold till September 21st. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
PCR 53-20, 2021-062, police educational expense.
Lori Michaelides on behalf of the police department. The department is seeking an exception to bid and authorization to expend funds for college expenses on an as-needed basis from various vendors not to exceed $80,000 for police officers for fiscal year 2021. This expense is statutory. Rhode Island General Law 42-28.1 provides for the reimbursement of educational expenses to include tuition, books, and supplies for police officers in a criminal justice degree program. This authorization would cover the department through June 30th, 2021, and funding would come from operating budget code 30-301.
Major, you have indicated various vendors. Who were those vendors?
That's correct. The different universities. By statute, the college or university selected has to be accredited by the New England Association of Colleges and Secondary Schools. As long as it's an accredited university, then the officer has the flexibility to choose which institution they want to attend.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? We have any comments from members of the public? Any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion favorable. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you. PCR 77-20, 2018-247, Neptune cold water meters.
Terry Fellow Water Division. Water Division requesting an additional $50,000 for purchase cold water meters.
And Terry, I believe at the last meeting, I had requested some information which you had provided me, correct?
That's correct.
And I don't have any further questions on that. Any questions, comments from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any comments from members of the public? Do we have any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move for favorable action.
Seconded.
We have a motion favorable. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Item number 13, PCR 81-20, resolution in regards to Bayside Sewer Project. Warwick Sewer Authority and City to sign and issue the contract to D'Amber Construction without further delay. I am going to be putting this in the pending file, but before I do that, I want to have some conversation, and we also have a lot of members of the public who also want to comment. So just a brief history, because there's been a significant amount of information disseminated over the last several days regarding the sewers. Back in 1992, the city of Warwick, the city council, which was sponsored by Councilman Pezzatoro at the time, introduced and had on the ballot $130 million general obligation bond to do the sewering in the city of Warwick. General obligation bond is paid for by the entire population of the city. That was voted on by the taxpayers and was approved. So in 1992, the taxpayers approved to complete the sewers in the city of Warwick. They recognized the benefits to the environment, to the properties, the necessity, et cetera, et cetera. After a period of time, the 130 million was found not to be adequate, and another $50 million general obligation bond was put on the ballot, and it was passed. and the sewers still weren't completed. So we fast forward to 2012. When I was campaigning in 2012, particularly through the Bayside 1, 2, and 3 area, which is referred to in the Sewer Authority designation, more commonly known as Riverview Terrace and Highland Beach, the single most told issue to me was, if you win this election, you got to help us get these sewers. I heard from people who had been waiting since 1990 for sewers. I heard from people who had to put in septic systems at a significant cost. We formed in 2013, I think my second or third month in my first term, I formed the Warwick City Council Sewer Review Commission. That commission met for over 1 year. We met no less than once a week. Sometimes we met 2 and 3 times a week. And every meeting was no less than 2 hours. So there has literally been thousands of hours put into getting the sewers delivered to the residents of Bayside 1, 2, and 3. We also had numbers projected back then, and they were projections. That's what they were. They were guesstimates. And those numbers were high then. In December of 2013, the City Council passed a $56 million bond, a total of $56 million. 23 was to make the repairs to the infrastructure, the sewer authority location, et cetera. 33 million in a revenue bond was approved for bringing sewers to 6 more areas in the city of Warwick. One being Governor Francis, which has been recently completed. The other, in December of 2013, was to bring the sewers to Bayside 1, 2, and 3. The sewer project is of major significance to the residents in that area because January 1st of 2014, the deferment that DEM had been given to the residents that were on cesspools within 200 feet of the water would expire. And that wasn't the first deferment that DEM had given to the city of Warwick. In fact, there were several deferments, and the city of Warwick failed to get those sewers completed and failed to deliver them to the folks that had been wanting them, expecting them, and certainly deserving of them. The big issue here is the cost of the sewers. And I absolutely concur. I've been on the record about it numerous times, not only in the Beacon, in the Journal, at council meetings. You've been hearing me say it for 8 years. I have echoed these same comments at least 95% of the Riverside Neighborhood Improvement Association meetings. The cost of the sewers has increased substantially over the years because what has happened is elected officials say, Let somebody else deal with it. That's somebody else's problem. I don't want to touch sewers. I'm not taking on sewers. No one ever got elected by promising sewers. In December of 2013, I had a gentleman that came before the city council and he testified to us that he had put in a septic system in 2005. He lives in the Bayside area, I believe it was on Long Meadow. He had put in a system in 2005. Excuse me, and back in the day, there was apparently some government assistance when you put in a new septic system, and that septic system then cost him $8,000. In November of 2013, 8 years later, he was replacing that septic system because it failed. Because a lot of the area in this Bayside 1, 2, and 3 is blue mold soil and is ledge. He had to replace his system at a cost of $30,000. So in a period of 8 years, he spent $38,000 on 2 septic systems. And when I heard that, and I heard from another individual who had spent a significant amount of money on a septic system, I said, this doesn't make any sense. These folks have been waiting. They've been promised sewers for a very, very long time. And they've been forced to put in a septic system because the city failed to deliver on those promises. And those promises, by the way, have nothing to do with the current administration because those promises were made on several administrations prior. Nothing to do with the current administration. And in hearing that, I had also started working on enabling legislation for the sewer authority through the Warwick City Council Sewer Review Commission, an extension of the year that we had already put in. And one of the things that was very important is that anyone who had not received the sewers because of the inaction of the city and had to be forced to put in a septic system should not have to bear the burden of the assessment of sewers when the city finally decides to get this done. So in the enabling legislation, we addressed numerous things. And this has been spoken about for a very, very, very long time. And I'm saying that because recently I've heard comments that, this sewer thing is just, all of a sudden, came on the surface again. No, it's not all of a sudden came on the surface. This has been on the surface for the last 8 years. It has been all over the place, in the newspapers, in the meetings, in the neighborhood meetings. As recently as a couple of months ago at a neighborhood meeting, I spoke at length about the sewers, the cost of the sewers, the timing that we were facing. But in the enabling legislation, we also changed the interest rate that was being charged by the sewer authority. The sewer authority, prior to the enabling legislation, was charging 6.3 to 9% interest on the loans that were given to our very citizens for putting in the sewers. Like that's just bizarre that that type of interest rate was being applied. One of the changes that we did in the enabling legislation was we reduced the interest rate to 1.25%, a not to exceed 1.25% over the cost of borrowing the money by the sewer authority. The other thing that the enabling legislation did was change the payment terms from 20 years to 30 years. And that was important because in 2013, we didn't have COVID, but we were still recovering from the Great Recession. And people were struggling then. And the costs were continuing to escalate then. I was actually criticized by one person for changing the terms from 20 years to 30 years because he said it was just going to cost them a lot more. It's not totally accurate. It would cost you more if you took 30 years instead of 20. That is true. But the benefit was at the time, and still is, if someone needs to lower that monthly payment or quarterly payment by taking the extra 10 years, then they would have that option to do so. They could pay it off up front if they wanted to do so. We also implemented in the enabling legislation that if someone had to put in that septic system, that they would get 20 years of use on a properly functioning septic system before they receive the assessment. And that was out of a fairness to folks who were forced to spend thousands and thousands of dollars putting in a septic system. These septic systems, I've been told, can be as cheap as $18,000, I've heard. I've also heard that one of those systems had to have several repairs done on it after it was installed. There are very small lots in that Highland Beach area and down in the Riverview Terrace. We're not even sure they're going to be able to put a septic system because the lots are so small. There's a certain requirement for the septic system based upon how many bedrooms and how many bathrooms, et cetera. And if they were able to squeeze a septic system in that postage stamp lot, they would not have basically any other options for that property. We have situations in that area right now where there are people, quite a few people, and that number varies also depending upon who's delivering the number, of anywhere from 40 to 80 people who are on cesspools within 200 feet of the water. Those have been outlawed. And DEM, even though some people say it's not so, DEM has the right to implement fines for anyone that is on a septic system, a cesspool, within 200 feet of the water. Those deferments have continued from Director Coit from DEM because of us passing the bond in December of 2013. They had asked how long it would take us to complete the installation of the proposed projects, and the answer was 7 years, 2020. So DEM extended the deferment for the final time, was the wording, the final extension, because we had committed to doing the sewers. We had passed the bond resolution, and we had also continued forward. We got the enabling legislation passed. We still haven't completed the sewers. We have spent an astronomical amount of money in doing the archaeological work throughout Bayside. And while there was an upfront expenditure, it was well known that the long-term savings would be a benefit because the significant findings that may and were discovered would be addressed with the Narragansetts and worked through in the most cost-effective way we could. And also, as a point of information, one of the first things I did when I formed the Warwick City Council Sewer Review Commission was appointed a gentleman named Doug Harris from the Narragansett Indians to our commission. And the reason being is the problems exploded in 1990 when the Narragansetts were disrespected, when there was no consideration for the history, for the burial grounds, for the campsites, etc. And what they did was they went and got a federal injunction and stopped the program. I wanted to be sure that wouldn't happen again. I wanted to be sure that we, as the new members, so to speak, of the city council, developed, earned, and cherished a relationship of respect between the Narragansetts and the city of Warwick, and we have done so. So we're at this point now where I don't think anyone disagrees that the sewers need to be completed. I also understand and I concur, and I've been a proponent, an advocate of fighting against the costs of doing the sewers. One of the major issues that I have with the cost of these sewers is the customers who have been waiting for so long to get sewers have also been waiting that same time period to have their roads fixed, to have the roads repaved, to have potholes fixed, to have sinkholes taken care of. Because they've been told, we're going to do the roads, don't worry, you're gonna be fine. When we do the sewers, that's when we're gonna do the roads. We're not doing the roads now because we don't want to dig them up again when we do the sewers. Those roads have been like that for 30 years. The people who live all along Bayside 1, 2, and 3 have been denied a much lower cost of sewers. They have been denied road repairs. They've been denied the social decency of being able to take a shower and wash their clothes at the same time without a cesspool or a septic system overflowing. But now we continue with that same mentality that when we do the sewers, we're going to make you pay for the roads too. That is outrageous. It's outrageous that the folks who have waited so long for this public service are now expected to pay for the roads. The 900 property owners that live in this area have paid for the roads like the rest of us every single year in their taxes. Every year, especially recently, because we've increased the asphalt budget. We've got a $10 million bond coming down now to continue Mayor Solomon's road repair program, which is wonderful. But the folks that live in Bayside 1, 2, and 3, they're paying the same taxes as we are. But yet they're going to be expected to pay for the cost of the roads. That is not acceptable. That's not even conscionable. So the argument on the other side of the tracks from sewers that were done 25 years ago is we paid for the cost of the roads. We paid for ours. We're not paying for theirs. That is not accurate. When this sewer plan came through with $180 million in totality on those general obligation bonds, everyone and every taxpayer in the city of Warwick was paying a share of those sewers. The federal government was subsidizing 60% of the costs. The city at one point in time may also have been providing a stipend. So it's not fair to say we paid for ours, we don't want to pay for theirs. The sewers, this is not a luxury we're talking about. This isn't a commodity. This is about a right that the people that live in Bayside 1, 2, and 3 have been very, very patient to receive. The longer we kick this can down the road, and the longer we say, let someone else worry about it, let another elected official worry about it, I don't want to deal with it on my watch, the worst it's going to be. This is not getting any cheaper. It just continues to get more expensive. The bid that was recently awarded by the Sewer Authority, and I thank them for doing that, and I thank the board at the Sewer Authority and especially the Finance Committee for all their hard work in getting to this point. That amount of money is $18 million. And we have about 900 properties that are going to be impacted. So on the face of it, one would say, the math says $20,000 per property owner. But we also know that's not reality. We know that those costs are going to increase. Those costs could increase 20%. They could increase 25%. The cost of doing those sewers could increase to 20 million, 22 million. It's very possible. Could increase to 25 million. So this is my position. The folks that have lived in Bayside 1, 2, and 3, and I know there's other areas, Councilman Sinapi, you have areas in your ward. I know that they've been waiting for sewers for a very, very long time. I believe Councilman Ricks has some in his area. And I also believe there might be another 1 or 2 areas. We have an obligation as a community to get this done for the people without forcing an outrageous financial burden on them. It has been asked or said, why doesn't someone, and I'll assume the someone is me, go to our leadership in Washington and ask for help? Well, for those folks that have attended the meetings that I've spoken at for the last 8 years, for those folks that have been reading the papers, and for the folks that I've communicated with as much and as often as I can, let it be known that I have reached out to our federal delegation countless times for monies to offset the cost of the sewers. Not once, not twice, many times. And the answer is the same. There is no monies appropriated for sewers. Well, I hear all the time about green housing and all the hype about how significant green housing is and how important it is to protect the environment and to protect our water and to protect our fishermen and our shell fishermen, et cetera, et cetera. we need the financial help from the federal government to do this. The people can't shoulder this burden. And on top of that, force them to pay for the roads that they already deserve. So we as the city of Warwick, we need to make a commitment to get these sewers completed. We need to make the commitment to our people who are receiving these sewers that you will be assured no one will be put into bankruptcy. No one will have their house foreclosed on. To my knowledge, that has never happened in the city of Warwick. And also, in our enabling legislation, it was mandatory that the sewer authority comes up with a hardship program for those that can't afford to pay for the sewers or can't afford to pay a portion of those sewers. And there's a big difference between can't and won't. For all of those folks that can't afford to pay for the sewers, there is a hardship plan in place. Bear in mind, the assessment for these sewers isn't starting today or tomorrow. No one is going up to anyone and saying, you owe us $20,000 or $25,000 to pay for the sewers. That's not what's happening. The first assessment doesn't get sent out until the sewer install is completed and the valve is turned. Do I know what that final number will be? I do not know what that final number will be. No one can give you to the penny accounting of that, what that number will be. And the analogy I've used time and again is when someone says, well, you know what? If I buy a roof from you, you're going to give me a number and I'm going to expect to pay that number when I'm done. I'm not going to expect to pay more. But that number does have a moving target on it, just like doing sewer construction. If when that roof shingles are removed and it's discovered that your roof deck is all rotted, or you got 3-inch spaces in between your deck boards, you have to have an assessment done for laying plywood over that entire roof. So it's impossible to give you a hard and fast number in most cases. And it's not different than the sewers. So what I think makes sense for the people that I represent is we have a bid in place now to do these sewers for $18 million. What I think makes sense is for the city to assign a cap of not to exceed X dollars and cents to complete these sewers. And if it does, then it's going to have to be paid for either through a grant from the federal government, or it's going to have to be treated the same as we look at the cost of educating our children. It's something that would have to be put into the cost of completing that would have to be put into the general fund. Now, folks of my age, we can say, not just my age, any age, can say, listen, I don't have any kids in school. I don't want 53% of my taxes to go to pay for kids in school because I don't have any kids in school. I don't have children in school today, but I did. And someone else was paying for my children to go to school. Now it's my turn to pay my fair share. So I think I have expressed my position quite clearly on this. I see Councilman McAllister has raised his hand. We have 4 attendees who have also have their hands raised for some period of time. So as I said, because the sewer authority has awarded the contract to D'Amber Construction in the amount of just under $18 million, I'm going to take that as good faith, and I am going to make a motion after whatever comments continue to put this PCR 8120 in the pending file. Councilman McAllister.
Thank you, Councilman Lattiser. No, I just wanted to hear from the public. So I think
Thank you.
let's hear from them. Thank you.
So I'll come back to the members of the council if that's okay with everyone. We've had some of these attendees here for quite a while. I will open it up. Phil, if you could recognize one attendee at a time, we will open this up to comments from the members of the public. For those of you that are new to the council meetings, you certainly are invited to express your comments and your opinions. Please do not make any personal comments, but certainly we want to hear from you on the issues, which is why I've allowed this to open up under public comment. Typically, when we hold a bid or we move it forward, typically that's what happens. But I feel it's very important that everyone hear from the members of the public that want to speak for this. So Phil, if you could please select whoever's hands are raised one at a time. And when you speak, by the way, excuse me, please be sure to identify yourself for the record. Go ahead, Phil.
Hi, Councilman. This is Chris Kate from MIS. I'm filling in for a few
Oh,
minutes
okay,
here.
Chris. Yes, please.
I have unmuted Terry, so feel free to go ahead, Terry, and speak.
Hi, my name is Terry Medeiros, Linden Ave. I wanted to address the sewer situation, and I want to start it to say that I would say that even when Councilman Lattiser made his promise to bring sewers at the time of his initial campaign, he could not have known the extent of what was going to happen with the 3 levels of archaeological dig, with the introduction of new words we had never used before, HDD and E-grinder. And I think that in fairness, I believe that he's still trying to hold his promise to help us with our wastewater. I would further like to go on, though. What we have learned since then gives me great concern, and I would like to ask all of the council if they could put themselves in their home for a moment and envision this happening in your house, because it hasn't happened in Warwick before. We're asking for people to pay an assessment for the pipe and go in front of our house. But then we're asking them to use an E-grinder, to have a dedicated amp box. This is all before hooking up, to have a generator so that you can flush your toilets during a power outage, to understand that when you sell your house, you will either reduce the sale price for the loan associated with the assessment, or having to tell the potential buyer you must use electricity to flush your toilet. None of that can be held against Councilman Lattiser when he made his promise to help us. But I would like to bring one more thing, and I don't want to keep other people from being able to speak, but I did my own self-education. I learned about HDDs from specialists. And one of the big things they said, and it's a scholarly journal, and it is from 2 horizontal directional drilling experts. I have the source cited if anyone needs it. And they say that while HDD has been used, it is much less commonly used when the grade is less than 1%. So my push for stopping this for now is that, has anyone gone along and checked how many yards, how many properties have a grade of less than 1%? Has DeAmbra acknowledged how often they have done directional drilling? I spoke with Mahoney, the only E1 grinder specialist from Rockland, Mass. And even on the Sewer Authority page, it speaks about having to incur the cost of replacing or rebuilding e-grinders after an average of 7 to 10 years. That cost is averaged between $3,000 and $6,000, depending on if it is a partial or full replacement. The important thing to remember here is, to all the council, is that only plumbers certified to work on these specific grinders can do the work. And as the gentleman up at Mahoney E-Grinder said, they are the only ones certified in this area. And if there is a power outage, and as a result, e-grinders have to be serviced, it could be a matter of days. So that is something that is all the homework we need to do before we ask people to pay the $25,000 whatever in front of all doing all this. Also, in saying that Mr. Lattiser has tried to get help, I would like to see us come together as a community and a team and go to the legislators. And as an example of that, when Coventry was struggling with their sewers, one of their senators, because we talked about how the interest rate of the assessment cannot go past, I don't want to say it wrong, but I believe it was 1.25% over the interest rate the construction loan will be for to the Sewer Authority. And this is my last piece of information. State Senator Raptakis, District 33 in Coventry, had a bill passed 37-0 that the sewer ratepayers in Coventry cannot pay more than what the Sewer Authority is paying on the loan. So even that 1.25% could be fought for to be erased. And I'm using this as an example to tell you that we need to halt this project until we can figure out how to get the asphalt bill off, get the tribal oversight off, get the interest rate off, and make our federal and state leaders help our council. So that's all I have to say, and I really appreciate you letting me have the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. I'm glad that you mentioned a couple of things that you did, because I had inadvertently neglected to speak on it so quickly. The grinder pumps, you're true. The lion's share of that area is on the low end of the gravity feed and will require grinder pumps. I can assure you that anyone who has paid attention to anything that I've said over the last 8 years, both at the Sewer Authority and on the council floor at nauseum, was about the grinder pumps. The grinder pumps are an integral part of the infrastructure of the sewer system. And it is something that should not be paid for by the individual property owners for the grinder pump period, which my understanding is the first pump comes in at no charge. Somewhere along the line it's paid for, but I don't feel the grinder pumps should be paid for at all by the individual units. That is something that should be, at the very least, spread out over the entire cost of operating this, the largest asset actually that we have in the city. The maintenance, the same thing. The Sewer Authority, the Board of Directors at the Sewer Authority has been very diligently working at a resolution to this problem. They have been diligently exploring the possibility of insurance policies to ensure for to pay for the repairs, etc. With regard to a power outage, you're correct. When you lose power, there is a battery backup system to those grinder pumps. And the newer pumps today are far more sophisticated than the old, by the way. They're quieter, they're more efficient, and certainly more reliable. But they do have a battery backup. The other thing that I was made aware of from the sewer authority is when there is a power outage that extends over a period of several days, which unfortunately, that's another problem that my people that live down there in Riverside experience too often. The sewer authority has the ability to go to the homes and empty those grinder pumps. So that is a service that they have also performed in the past. I absolutely concur with the comment about the 1.25% interest. That's why I prefaced it earlier by saying up to 1.25%. So I absolutely support, encourage, and request that the cost of borrowing the money be the maximum cost that is put forth to the assessment on the sewers. So thank you for your comments, Terry. Next on the list is, looks like Mark Janest.
Mark, feel free to speak when you're ready.
I want to begin by thanking the City Council for allowing us to speak on this very controversial issue. My name is Mark Janest. I live on Katy Avenue. And out of the many things I'm concerned with, one, nothing's been mentioned about the petitions that have gone around, where I guess it was almost 2-to-1 against moving forward with the sewer program because of the issues that Terry brought up so eloquently with regard to just not understanding the costs, not being able to predict the impact, the economic and financial hardship that this program will cause, particularly among those who have a difficult time paying for it. And you'll forgive me, but the promises of politicians, even those of goodwill, are rarely something that one can depend on. Until we have a direct knowledge of the kinds of issues that we need to understand, and that these issues are actually resolved, like the grinders, like all of the costs associated with paving the roads and whatnot, I don't think this proposal should move forward. And as the petitions demonstrated, the majority of people are against moving forward on this until and whether we can actually resolve some of these really important financial problems that the neighborhood will have to contend with until we have the actual knowledge. So it is prudent on the part of the City Council, in my opinion, to not go forward with the sewer project until we have gathered more information, and more importantly, until we can get the support of the state and the federal government to offset these costs. And until that happens, I don't think the proposal should go through, and the City Council should go by the petition of over 200 people in the neighborhood that signed this over the last couple of days. So this shows that there is a real controversial issue revolving this the sewer system, and the fact that a majority of people do not want this proposal to go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your comments. And I'm not going to belabor the issue. We can talk about it ad nauseum. Every day that we delay getting this project completed is going to increase the financial burden and the financial pain of delivering this system. To say that it's financially responsible to delay this for any length of time, a month, a year, or two, I just have to respectfully disagree with it. And to go to the comment regarding politicians with, a broad brush, that's a bit rough, because I can assure you that the members of this city council and the city council members that I served with over the last 8 years have been very diligent in trying to get this done to the best of their ability, to get it done as cost effectively as possible. And on a personal note, I have no skin in the game on this. I have nothing to gain whether those sewers get done or not. I have sewers and I've paid for them when I purchased my home. I've paid for sewers on the other property that I own, significantly so. So my only gain in this is to be able to deliver a human service, a decency service to the people that I represent that are in a lot of trouble. And whether people want to accept that or not is up to you. The people that I represent in Bayside 1, 2, and 3 are in a lot of trouble. Those that are on cesspools, your options, there are none. You have one of two options: put in a septic system or hope that you can hold off until the sewers come to be. The folks that are on septic systems that I've heard from that tell me, Ed, when are we getting sewers? I cannot afford to have my septic system or my cesspool pumped every couple of months at $200 to $250 a month. I have people that have said to me, I can't sell the house because nobody wants a house with a cesspool. I've also had people say to me, I've lived in the house for 30 years. I've never pumped a cesspool. Okay. The only thing that I can promise you is that I am going to continue to do everything I can to continue adding to the thousands of hours that I have put into getting these sewers to the people that are in so much trouble down there. Eventually, DEM is not going to continue with any of these deferment. And I don't say that as a scare tactic. Believe me when I tell you that. I'm not saying any of this as a scare tactic. I'm simply presenting the options as I see them and the significance of not kicking this can down the road any further and getting it done in a manner that is the most cost effective for those folks that can't pay for it today, have you on a hardship plan. For those folks that don't have a job today, the same thing. That's my goal. Next, Pauline Mann.
Pauline, please speak when you're ready.
Hi, this is Pauline Chanest. I didn't realize it came up as man. Katie Avenue. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Pauline. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm in a car, so I just want to make sure you can hear me. I just had 3 points that I just wanted to make. I agree wholeheartedly with Terry's comments as well as Mark's. And one of the things, like with the anecdotes that we hear a lot, for instance, the anecdote of I can't afford to keep pumping my septic every other month because it's failing and I can't keep having my cesspool fail. I do believe that those things truly do happen. However, I am of a different belief than a lot of people who are going to be calling in tonight, because I just think that this project has gotten so far out of hand that it is now socially unjust to push this program onto the backs of 900 people when it started 50 years ago. And it's actually a citywide program. I've expressed this over the years. I don't think it's fair at all. I do believe people do need to have a remedy. And the remedy for those people can be get on a private septic, because it's not that they can't afford to go to the next step. they're afraid to get stuck in a limbo of, I just bought a brand new one and I'm going to be asked to reinvest in a sewer after I just fixed it. That is where I'm hearing people are saying, I'm holding off on moving from cesspool to septic until I know if I have to get a sewer. I'm holding off on getting a new septic until I have to know whether or not I'm getting a sewer. So that has been a lot of the anecdotes that are going around, and it's been construed that people asking when our sewer is coming through is evidence that they want sewers versus, hey, are they coming through? Can I make a decision? I need to move on. This isn't working for anybody. So that's one thing that I wanted to state. Also, the second thing I would like to state is that a lot of hardship plans that are implemented, and a lot of them that are going on right now due to COVID-19, actually have a negative effect on people's credit ratings. So somebody who's currently right now in a position where they're out of work, who ends up in that kind of a program, down the road may have that negatively affect them when they go to get a loan in another way. The next thing, you made the comment, and I've heard this comment several times over this past weekend regarding it's not a matter of who can afford versus who won't afford. I would like to know, how would that decision be made? Who is deciding who can afford it and who can't afford it? Like who is making that decision? If it's based strictly on looking at somebody's income, what their paycheck is, it doesn't take into effect some people are on very expensive healthcare plans. Some people have very high medical bills. Some people have children in college. There are certain lifestyle things that, are you saying that somebody needs to make that decision? Either I pay this extra $1,200 a year or send my kid to school, or and that 1,200 number I just believe is way too low, because the plan does not include e-grinders, asphalt, or any of these things. And I truly believe that if you go forward with saying, I'm going to take D'Amber's bid, you are literally stunting our ability to make sure e-grinders and asphalt and hookups are all determined. Like it literally stops the conversation. Finally, the analogy of whether or not you're going to do your roof. I think you are taking apples to oranges. A roof and a sewer system are two completely different entities. A roof is a personal household decision that you make, that you privately own, that you can make those determinations. You might have a roof and you say, oh, I'm going to put a second thing of shingles on them. Okay, I'm going to do a patch. You may make some decisions that are going to help you out in the short term, but that's a personal decision. Well, the sewers literally puts us under the thumb of the WSA, which has been poorly mismanaged for 50 years. And why would we, after 50 years of mismanagement, believe that all of a sudden they're going to miraculously know how to take care of the infrastructure, not overcharge, be sure that the water gets to your house, take care of the e-grinders? I was with you at one point where we gave the Tiverton plan to the WSA board, where the Tiverton plan that went through clearly had the e-grinders under the responsibility of the municipality. No resident had to pay for replacement. If it broke, the municipality was taking care of it. And that, to me, needs to be addressed. I've been saying that for several years now. And I think by saying we're going to go with D'Amber, you just stop that conversation. And that's just another bill that's going to be several $1,000s every 7 years or so, that people need to understand, that adds over the time $21,000 to your bill. And what are you going to do? Take out another loan somewhere along the line for this? So the roof versus sewer is apples to oranges. A roof versus a septic would be apples to apples, because you're talking about two privately owned entities. So I think when we're using analogies as we're making our descriptions, we need to take into mind how it comes across. The two different entities. A sewer is a publicly run entity. A septic is a privately run entity. Your roof on your house is up to you to take care of, just like a septic would be. So those are two different things. And I trust my judgment in my own household more so than I do the WSA, which has proven for 50 years that it can't even get this job done correctly. Also, currently, right now, as you know, we have 2 water mains that are not working out of 3. So 60% of the water pipes that are serving our city are broken, they're underworked, and they are being band-aided left and right. So our infrastructure is falling apart. And now what you want to do is expand infrastructure and say, let's trust the entities that haven't taken care of it ever. I love your tenacity, Ed. I've always said that. I just think that it's time to move on from this and start looking at alternatives, because the cost does not justify what's happening today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Pauline. The next attendee is Rob Cody.
Rob, feel free to speak when you're ready.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me, Ed?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
I just want to make sure, I know one thing that we've done as a council and a cities, since this has been on Zoom, we've encouraged and welcomed students and children to come listen and participate in this. And I'm not saying there is, but they can watch it. They don't have to watch it live. They can watch it on YouTube. And the last I remember was this participant, there was an unfortunate incident with our chief executive of the city. And I'd like to get some guarantees or something that we won't have another episode like we had, an unfortunate episode.
Thank you, Councilman Howe. I'm sure that that unfortunate incident will not occur. I can't change what happened in the past. But
we are a public forum.
I understand you, and I don't disagree with that. If you remember at the beginning of my comments, when we went to the public, and it was mainly for the new members who are just starting to attend the council meetings, sometimes in your enthusiasm to make a point, sometimes in your passion, and I'm certainly guilty of it, as we all are, you tend to expound perhaps a little differently than you would like. So just Councilman Howe's comment is well taken. Let's make sure that everyone is respected and certainly receive the respect that you give.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councilman Howe. Mr. Cody, go ahead.
Yes, Councilman, can you hear me clearly?
We can, sir.
Councilman Lattisaw, I know that you're intimately involved in this and you have been for a long time, and you've put a lot of passion into it, and I appreciate that. And I know you're intimately familiar with the contract and the language and all of the background logistics that have taken place leading up to where we are today. What I'm concerned is, can you point me in the direction of the contract that that points to and identifies the commodities escalation clause and the particulars of the commodities escalation clause?
That's something that we'd have to get the contract have forwarded to you, Mr. Cody. I can't point to it right now.
Are you familiar with the commodities escalation clauses and the particulars of that section of the contract?
I am not.
Okay, that to me is a major problem. And the reason that's a major problem is because with this particular contractor, in the past with sewer projects, for example, on Sandy Lane, Social Drive, Morning Glory, Crane Street, there were no commodities escalation clauses. And that's only one of the many contracts that were entered into by the Warwick Sewer Authority with this particular contract, that there were no commodities escalation clauses. And the results of the lack of the commodities escalation clauses were cost overruns of the project. And as we all know, what are the results of the cost overruns of the project? We come back to the ratepayers and we have to increase the ratepayers' rate to compensate for the cost overruns, which in part were because of lack of oversight and lack of specific due diligence in terms of commodities escalation. Now, as a contractor yourself, I am quite sure that any project that you enter into, that you have a specific commodities escalation clause that you're extremely well versed in, because as we all know, with commodities escalation clauses, if they're manipulated or if we don't adhere to them by the letter of the contract, it results in litigation. That litigation cost comes back as an expense to the contract, which that cost overrun then becomes the responsibility of the ratepayer. And as an example, I can tell you from my house on Janet Drive, when the project on Sandy Lane was done without the commodities escalation clause, and there were many other projects, many other problems on that project, our rates all over the city went up to pay for it. So, and as you know, I'm a stickler for contract language. I would beg that everybody involved in the production of this project, whether you're for or against the project, should really know the specifics of the contract, because you need to be able to express those specifics in terms of the impact financially to the residents. So I think that before you go any further, not only yourself and the city council, but all the residents need to know what the specifics are of the commodities escalation clause, because that's the one part of the specification of the contract that's going to come back and bite them, right? Because they have no control over commodities escalation, unless in fact there's a cap that's built specifically into the contract. And let me give you another example. In terms of third-party inspection, on the project that we had on Sandy Lane, there was no third-party inspection, and there were multiple problems from compaction to even, for example, and I'm extremely familiar with that contract because I was involved in a post-investigation. For example, as part of the sewer authority project, the contractor was obligated to videotape every single piece of property, the plantings, the gardens, the fencing, so forth and so on. And they were also, the contract was extremely specific that there were to be a certain number of photographs taken of every single project, of every single piece of property. And it was so specific that the contract even laid out the size and quality of the prints and the paper of the photos. Well, the ratepayers paid for those specifics in the contract. However, those activities were never performed, and we paid for them. As another example, in that project on Sandy Lane, it was the contractor's responsibility to purchase and provide a nuclear Troxler device, which was to be maintained at the Warwick Sewer Authority. For those of you that don't know what a nuclear Troxler device is, that's the device that tests for the compaction of the soils when the trenches are being backfilled to ensure that they are being backfilled in accordance with the Blue Book, with the code. Well, that was never purchased and it was never held at the Warwick Sewer Authority. But guess what? The residents and the ratepayers paid for it. So from my chair, having paid my assessment a long time ago and also seeing an increase in my sewer rates every single year and with every single project, I'm concerned about it. Furthermore, as a construction inspector, one of the things I'm really concerned about is when you have an entity that does not have a track record of bringing in a project on time or on budget. And unfortunately, with the players that we have now that are intertwined to produce this project for the residents of the city of Warwick, they have no back record of coming in on any project on time or on budget. Zero, none. They cannot point to any projects that are on time, on budget. Furthermore, they should be on time, under budget with the advent of all of the tools that we now have in construction management to look forward and come up with escalation clauses and to see where we can minimize these cost overruns, right? On every project that I'm involved in, we have personnel specifically dedicated to cost overruns and to making sure that they don't happen and to abiding specifically by the contract language. So I would respectfully request, as well as the last three guests, that this whole thing be shelved until these simple answers, these simple questions can be answered. And until such time as everybody knows the specifics, and without having to pick up a document and go through the pages, you can read right off the top of your head, as a proponent of this project, what the ramifications are and what the responsibilities after the fact will be to the ratepayers. This project should be withheld until such further time as that you can do that. Thank you, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rob. The next attendee is Galaxy S8.
Galaxy S8, feel free to speak when you're ready.
Please identify yourself for the record. Galaxy S8. Please
Hi,
identify
this is
yourself.
Michelle McMahon.
Okay. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, I'm calling in because I would like to also object to this sewer project. It's not fair to ask mostly low to middle class homeowners to accept such an astronomical debt. And I believe that the true cost of all of this whole project is not being explained to the homeowners, and that's not fair to keep that from them. And I know for a fact that it's not being explained to them because I spoke with a lot of them this weekend, and most of them thought it was for free. Most of them had no idea that they had to pay for these sewers and that it could end up being $30,000 or $40,000 on their back. They had no idea. People were shocked. They were upset. They were angry and flabbergasted that no one has come to them and told them that this is going on. They hear, whispers here and there. Oh yeah, sewers are coming, sewers are coming. No one ever said to them, this is what it's going to cost you. This is what it's going to take. And that's not fair. And as far as selling your home down the road, you have to knock that price off of the value of your home to cover the sewer expense, which in essence means I will be paying for sewers forever. It's that money that I'm losing is money out of my pocket that I have to leave on the table because I have to lower the value of my house. Now, I don't know about you, but if I have to leave 20 or 30 or 35, $40,000 on the table when I sell my house, that's going to affect the rest of my life. That's going to determine what I do for the rest of my life. That's going to determine if I can afford to buy another home. It's going to determine if I can retire, if I can buy a new car if I need to, if I can pay for my prescriptions. It's going to determine a lot of things. And I don't think it's fair that we should be strapped with that kind of expense without even knowing about it and without even having things explained to people. And also, Earl Bond, which is your interim director at the WSA, is quoted in an article in the Beacon, I believe it was September 3rd, said that directional drilling is inherently risky. And he said that the price is going to go up. They're already past the $25,000 to $27,000 range, and it could be more. And I also found out that they're doing the directional drilling blindly, which makes it even more risky. And just the sound of that scares me. I don't know about you, but just the sound of that scares me. They could run into ledge, old foundations, all kinds of other things that they can run into. Yet none of that has been explained. None of that's been answered. What are you going to do about that? What happens if that happens? How much is that going to cost us? I understand you've been doing this for a long time, Ed. I understand the can has been kicked down the road for many years, but at this time, it's just not ready. It's just not, there are not enough solid factual answers to put this forward and to say, yes, we can do this. This is, I don't think anybody should take this decision lightly. You're affecting over 900 homeowners, and they shouldn't have to be burdened with this. Most of these people are either retired or they're young families that are just starting out. Where do you expect a retired couple or single person is going to come up with that kind of money every month or every quarter to pay for the sewer assessment? Where do you think that money's come from? They can barely buy prescriptions right now. What about people with their young families? Are they going to pay for a sewer, or are they going to put their kid through college? That's the questions that these people have to ask themselves. And that's the questions that you and all the other council members should be asking yourself also, because this is just not fair. I understand your point that it's needed, this and that, but I respectfully request that this not be brought forward until and unless you can come up with these answers and that it is satisfied everyone's questions so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. The next attendee is Deb Dwyer.
Deb, feel free to unmute and speak when you're ready.
Hi, it's Mark and Deb Dwyer from Arlington Avenue. I'm curious to know why we changed by paying by how much frontage we have to having the overall cost divided by the 900 residents. Doesn't seem fair to me that if I have 50 feet of frontage and 1 bathroom, I'm paying the same amount as somebody that has 150 feet and 3 bathrooms. I'd also like to echo Michelle's comments. After talking to a lot of my neighbors, there's a couple across the street that just moved in like a month ago. They had no idea about the sewers. There's a guy down the street who's doing temporary work. He can't afford the sewers. And there's other people, and there's a lot of people in the neighborhood who are saying, I'm gonna have to walk away. That's all I got.
Thank you. The next speaker is Louise Graydon.
Lois, please unmute and speak when you're
Lois,
ready.
I'm sorry.
Yes, hi, Ed. Again, I want to thank you for doing what you have done, the years that you've devoted to this. I am in a unique situation. I have 3 properties that I inherited from my mother. Very hard for me to speak about this without getting emotional. But given what's been talked about, the cost, the uncertainty, you will leave me in a position of having to sell my property, which is in, my parents have been there, we're now deceased. Worked their whole life, didn't have a lot of money, to pass that on to us. And we will now be forced to sell it. I'm paying ridiculous amounts of taxes on properties that I doubt seriously they're assessed at what they are. I would say, please take this and you're welcome. But I could never get what I'm being assessed at. I feel that this is, and I'm probably in a high class situation. This is property that I've inherited. I can't imagine people that have families and are trying to keep balls in the air that will be in a worse situation. I will be able to sell, which I will be forced to do after this, and maybe lose my wonderful 18, which is in terrible repair. It's very personal and I don't want to get into it, but I'm saying I will be forced to lose the property that I have held and my family have held. Since my parents came to Katy Avenue back in 1930. I think this is unfair to the citizens of Bayside. And I think that we are being forced to pay for the mistakes that have been made by others in the past. Again, I thank you, but this is very unfair.
Thank you, Louise.
Welcome.
Thank you, Louise, and thank you for all the time you spent speaking with the committee over the last 8 years too. At this time, I have to defer to our city council solicitor for a technical issue that has just been brought to our attention. Councilor Conley.
Thank you, Chair Lattiser. It's just come to our attention that the telephone numbers provided for remote access to the phone for tonight's meeting, due to technical difficulties, are not working and haven't worked all evening. We have, it came to our attention. We then, just a few moments ago, checked all 4 numbers and none of them work. Under the governor's executive order that applies to this meeting for remote access, the Zoom access alone is not sufficient to satisfy the Open Meetings Act pursuant to that executive order, which means 2 things for us at this point. We can't continue the meeting, and because we've determined that there's been no access through telephone for the entire meeting, all the work that you've done tonight will have to be done over at a meeting that meets all the remote access requirements of the executive order.
So at this point in time, based upon the advice of our council solicitor, I need a motion to adjourn the Warwick City Council.
I ask a quick question of whoever's handling the tech thing. I'm confused because we had people call in. How the heck did they call in?
It's the 800 numbers that are not working. If you're using the Zoom app, it works fine. It's just the 800 numbers.
So all the people that connected were only connecting via the Zoom app, is what you're saying?
The Zoom app either on their phone or via a PC.
Got it.
Thank you, Councilman. I need a motion to adjourn the Warwick City Finance Committee. Councilman,
there is an attendee raising their hand. I'm not sure if at this point you can.
we cannot continue.
Cannot recognize anybody at this point.
Okay.
We've been advised by our city council solicitor, the meeting cannot continue. I need a motion to adjourn the City Council Finance Committee meeting. Councilman McAllister?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm so
Councilman
sorry.
Howe.
Thank you. I understand what the solicitor said, but there's a lot of city business that has to be addressed. And can we move to a docket session possibly where the public is not in, where the public is usually not, can we move to the docket session? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
Fair question.
Through the chair, please, no, we cannot. That's still an open meeting. And so it will not meet the requirements of an open meeting under the executive order.
Understanding, Mr. Connolly, thank you. So normally when we would have the meeting and we go to the docket session to kind of keep the city moving on important things that must be docketed, the public wouldn't speak about that at that time, but they witness it. And since the Zoom meeting is being recorded live, would we still be, so that's where my confusion comes, where we can docket stuff for the city that will be discussed at a later meeting.
Fair question.
The executive order does not exempt even open meeting procedural matters from the entire, for instance, it doesn't carve out. You can do those matters in which the public wouldn't be speaking, that you can carve those out from the remote access requirements, either through Zoom or the phone. I understand the logic of what you're saying, but the executive order doesn't allow for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you, Councilman Howell. Good question, good points. Once again, gentlemen, I need a motion to adjourn at the advice of the council solicitor.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any objections? Hearing none, we're adjourned. It
And
is now.
Mr. President? I'm sorry, but at this time, that also means, as I think is clear, but for the sake of completeness, that you will not be able to hold your regular council meeting this evening either for those same reasons.
So I understand that. And I just to answer Councilman Howe's question, also, if individual council members need to docket something, we're getting an echo, so somebody needs to cut that off. Please email me and we can add it in under unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's a great resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good evening, everyone.